Municipal, with liberty and justice for all. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the November 25th, 2013 Board of Commissioners meeting. Before we begin, I will invite public participation for anyone who can't stay to comment during the regular meeting. And as we have someone walk up, I would like to just remind you that we are trying a new rule, which is the soft 5-minute rule, out of concern for the length of our meetings lately and out of respect for everyone's time. We're going to ask everyone to keep their comments to 5 minutes or less. If you get to 5 minutes, I'm not going to make you sit down, but I will gently remind you that it is 5 minutes, and we'd ask for your respect of everyone else's time. So please, sir, come up.
Good evening. My name's Paul Perot, West Beach Tree Lane, and I'm a 55-year resident. I may not be able to stay the evening, and I may not be able to get tomorrow's meeting. I would request that the board ask Mr. Wright if Mr. Mataka's statement is correct when he stated that the second segment of the 2006 open space bond vote requires a referendum on any large land use purchases. So if we could get some response to that. First, I would like to thank Mr. Matraka, Philip Wilson, Colleen Price, Leslie Morgan, Sarah Armstrong for their time and research on the purchase of the Androzen open space acquisition. From what I have heard, they seem to have excellent credentials regarding the issue, and the board should be thankful for their insight. I'm requesting that the board put this issue on the 2014 referendum. And if there is a referendum, it should also inform the voters of the township existing indebtedness. I doubt that 70% of the residents know we have $240 million in unfunded obligations. Open space is an asset to the township, but at what cost? Township taxpayers also have a parallel issue: taxes. Considering the fact that we owe $240 million in unfunded obligations, that should weigh against purchasing amenities. In addition to purchasing open space, it should not be a priority. I personally know 3 families that have moved out of Radnor Township because of the taxes. 2 of them lived at Inverary. The 4th person is moving out after 5 years and having renovated their home at a cost of over $800,000. They're concerned about their taxes. Within 5 houses of where I live, there are 5 homes where the residents are in their late 70s and up to 93 years old. These individuals are not concerned about open space but their taxes. Everyone I have spoken to has stated that it should be voted on by the taxpayers and not solely by the commissioners. This is not 2006 anymore. If the past boards have been physically responsible and not derelict in their duties concerning our tax dollars, we should not have had a 28% tax increase in 4 years, and we shouldn't have a $240 million unfunded obligation. And if this was the case, purchasing open space shouldn't have been a problem. It is due to the past board's mismanagement that we have had this economic problem. Just the $5 or $6 million that the township building went over the voted allowance without the proper oversight by the commissioners, just one example of the board's mismanagement. The board's first responsibility is to the financial responsibility of our tax dollars and essential services. Their first responsibility is not to provide non-essential amenities, especially at $11 million. As far as I'm concerned, we can thank previous boards for our economic problems. However, there are several current board members who have corrected the corruption and have taken steps to properly manage the township. I also want to thank our township manager and his staff for all they have done to put this right. So I would like an answer to my first question at some point. Is it required to have the purchase put on a 2014 referendum? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
I mean, John Race, you can answer that now, correct?
Well, I'm going to look at the question, but my recollection of what that question was just the incurrence of debt, not any specific direction. And that would be a typical question under the Unit Debt Act. It's just normally a question that says, are the taxpayers in favor of incurring some number of debt for this purpose?
That's not his question. His
Yeah.
question is it mandatory to have a referendum to vote on the purchase of Ardrossan?
I don't believe it is mandatory under the '06 bill, but I want to look at I don't have the question in front of me tonight.
John,
It's not 06, he's saying that the guidelines were set up that if you purchase open space or recommended you might go to referendum, but that's just a recommendation.
there was a recommendation contained in the Parks and Rec and Open Space study done in the late 80s, I think it's 91.
It's a recommendation.
It was a recommendation.
Right, but-
It's not a requirement. And quite frankly, I think it's a misinterpretation of what that plan says since I helped write it.
But I think his question was, did the '06, at least what I understood he was asking, did the '06 referendum question require a purchase like Ardrossan to go to another
No.
referendum?
Absolutely
The
did
06
not.
He's sitting
referendum,
out there. Why don't you ask him what his question is?
That's what I heard him
the
ask.
06 referendum dealt with electoral debt.
Right.
We could go out and borrow money now without '06 and buy Ardrossan if the board so wanted. We put on the ballot because if the voters vote for it, electoral debt, it doesn't count against what there's a certain limit that you can borrow.
Right. There's a borrowing base that
Borrowing base.
everybody
And if
has.
you get electoral debt, it doesn't go against that. So
Correct.
by the voters voting on that, it frees up the township to do other things if they want to do it without going over their electoral debt.
And
Okay, I think we got the answer. Thank you. Is there any other public comment? All right, we'll move along. I would like to announce that there was an executive session immediately preceding this meeting on November 25th, 2013, at which we discussed matters of litigation, personnel, and real estate. I next would like to announce that we have some board and commission vacancies coming up for the new year. I'm going to list them, and I think they're also on our website. And I would encourage residents who are watching or here tonight to consider getting involved in the new year, 2014, and putting your resume in for one of these commissions. The first is the Environmental Advisory Council, and we have one vacancy on that board. The next is the Historical and Architectural Review Board, and we have one vacancy there. The Parks and Recreation Board has 2 vacancies. The Shade Tree Commission has 1 vacancy. The Zoning Hearing Board has 3 vacancies. And the Stormwater Advisory Committee has 7 vacancies, although we are going to make some appointments to that tonight. And that one's a little bit tricky because it's one volunteer for each ward. So all of these, the terms would begin in January 1st. And again, if you're interested in any of these, you can call up the township or call up your commissioner to ask a little bit more about it and send your resumes into our manager, Bob Zienkowski.
Well, I'm happy to note that for the Zoning Hearing Board, George Nagel Esquire, who is coming off the Historical and Architectural Review Board, has expressed an interest in appointment to the Zoning Hearing Board. I think he'd be a wonderful addition. And Bob, I was...
Not with a name like that.
Yeah, I know. I was away this week, and my email was just totally out. But did Mr. Nagel, George Nagel, submit anything to you?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
I'd like to throw out there for the board's consideration, we should never have 3 people coming off the board at one time, that we consider extending one of the current members by 1 year so we can reestablish a more reasonable rotation. something, we don't have to decide tonight, it's just something I want to throw out there to think about.
All right, appointments to our Stormwater Advisory Committee. Again, as I just said, we have seven volunteers will be on this new board, and one will be from each ward. That's how we introduced this concept when we voted on it. Tonight, we're going to make appointments for the Ward 1, Ward 3, and Ward 7 slots. And we do not have an appointment for Ward 2, 4, 5, and 6. So if you live in one of those wards and you're interested in serving, please, we're going to try to make some appointments to that in the next week or two so that this group can get up and working quickly. So with that said, for Ward 1, I'd like to make a... Go.
I'll move the appointment of Paul Berg, Mayor, for Ward 1,
Well, let's-
Heather Gill for Ward
Okay.
3, and Paige Maz for Ward 7.
Second?
Any commissioner comment? Any staff comment? Or
Well, no comment at this
Okay.
point.
Any public comment? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It passes 7-0.
Okay.
So we now have 3 members of that board appointed, and we're seeking members, a representative from Ward 2,
Okay.
4, 5, and 6.
Could you say those names slowly?
Paul Berg, Mayor,
Bergmeyer.
Meyer,
Bergmeyer.
Heather Gill, and Paige Maz, M-A-Z.
All right, I'd like to make a comment that we had 8 applicants for, well, our ordinance does not allow us to appoint more than 1 person for each ward, per ward. And we had 5 applicants from Ward 1, and only 1 could be appointed. And the reason we had 5 from Ward 1 is Ward 1 has the more stormwater problems than any of the other wards. So I'm very disappointed that I could not see all these people appointed. They're all fine people. Gail Morrison has been she's president of the North Wayne Protective Association. She's been a leader on stormwater, pushing our board to do something. Sloan Walker is in the first ward. He has been on the Environmental Advisory Council. Craig Sullivan is a longtime resident, has great experience. And Jim Gigerich, another longtime resident, has an engineering degree, would be a great asset. But we can't appoint them, unfortunately, the way our ordinance is written. So I encourage all of them to stay active and involved, and I hope we can call upon their talents in the future.
Okay.
Well, I'll move the approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting of September 23rd, 2013, October 14, 2013, October 28th, 2013.
Second.
Any commissioner comment? Any staff comment? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved, 7-0. Next, we move on to our consent agenda. Again, these are very perfunctory items that don't ordinarily require debate. However, before we move to pass it, we will give an opportunity to any of the commissioners or any member of the public to remove any item that they would like to hear discussed. So, do I
Move the
have any-
approval of the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Next, we have our committee reports. We will start with Personnel and Administration with Commissioner Fisher.
You have to give me a minute to turn all these pages. All right. I will move I'm moving Resolution 2013-142. This is the approval of a 3-year contract with the Radnor Association of Township Employees, known as RATE.
Second?
And I think we'll ask administration to give us a synopsis or an update on this. I'm willing to do so as well, but if you want to say something, you can.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'd like to start off by thanking the members of RATE for working with us over the past couple of months, where we've stepped through a number of issues to get to the agreement that is now in front of the board. We have reached a tentative agreement on all the items that are in front of the board, both from the township side as well as the rate side. I'd also like to recognize the help that CARFAC provided in the process with taking a look at the terms. And this goes back 2 years while we've been doing a lot of fact-finding on the OPEB and pension liabilities. And the information that we had relative to those two items went a long way in sitting down with the representatives and looking at a larger picture. And Rate really stepped up and worked with us on those issues, and so we'd like to thank CARFAC and Rate for that. So this 3-year agreement, as proposed, takes some big strides towards addressing those issues over the long term, which from day one when we started talking about these issues, we recognized that it was a long-term solution, nothing that would be fixed overnight. So in working together with those employees, this contract here is a tremendous first step towards correcting those issues over the long term.
And if I also then just add to Bill's comments that, again, Rate has continued to work very well. They've lost a lot of members, either through layoff or separation, and they've continued to do a superior job here. And I think compared to other communities with larger staff, for the smaller staff that we have, I'd compare them and match them against anyone.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
I'll do some quick synopsis of the contract. I don't want to claim to emphasize any particular part. First of all, it is a 3-year contract, and the Rate employees will receive a 2.75% increase in pay in each year for 2014, 2015, and 16. And as part of this contract, administration and the Rate representation have agreed to eliminate OPEB and pension benefits for any new hires hired as January 1st, 2014. But we have agreed to maintain benefits with Rate. This board administration has worked very hard at funding the OPEB and the pension obligation, and we've moved large amounts of money over the last couple of years to make sure that we're bolstering that funding. If you'd like to read more, it is in the packet that's been advertised on the website. But I want to thank administration and the Rate employees for all the hard work that they do. We're very happy to have you, and we hope to, to keep this relationship going. One thing we're looking forward to, though, is as time goes on, I know administration is hoping that we can move toward a defined contribution plan that is reasonable and acceptable to both sides to help address this incredible liability that we're facing as a township. So hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll be able to move a little bit further on that. But I guess that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
I would just like to acknowledge, I've done this in years past, and I continue to feel this way, that our staff has really done an incredible job of adapting to the changes in this township. It's, we have continued to move on the continuum to operating much more like a private market force-oriented organization, whereas before we were really more governmentally run and not so efficiently run. And I've said this before, it is like our staff works in a new place, and it's much more efficient, much more is demanded of our staff. And they have really risen to the occasion, and I think they should constantly be told that we appreciate it, and we're very grateful for that. I also want to note that many of the changes that are most significant in this new contract will affect new hires that come on. And while that may not really affect our bottom line today, as we're not really hiring too much, but it will make a tremendous difference looking 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And that's really the job of this board, is to have the vision to get this township on the right track for the long term. And I think that has been accomplished here. So That's it. Anybody else have any comments?
Yes, I'll congratulate the rate employees also. They showed a sophisticated understanding of what's happening in the township, and together we made some wise decisions that I believe both parties will benefit from.
Any other commissioner comment? Staff comment? Any public comment? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And it's approved by a vote of 7-0. All right, community development with Commissioner Curley.
John Rice, would you explain to us what you're requesting or what staff is requesting with this item?
The DRB appeal.
Yes. Is it Kevin's? I mean,
Yeah, it is Kevin's. Steve and I talked about it before tonight because we weren't quite sure. I mean, I understand what the appeal is, and I think if those folks are here, they probably ought to present their case and have their say. But I would suggest that the board table any action on this until next Monday at your next meeting, so that Kevin can weigh in on it at that time.
Anyone here from the applicant? From Pet Supplies Plus? Okay. Yeah, come on up. Mhm. Did you understand that recommendation that was
I
just
did
made?
not.
Okay, so our Director of Community Development is not here tonight.
Okay.
So it was recommended to us that we hear out the plea here, but that we would probably, well, he's recommending that we table it until next week when he can give the reason for it.
Would I have to come back to that? or-
Well, you can state your case today, and then, we'll remember it and keep it in mind when we make our decision.
Okay, but I wouldn't have to come back to another meeting, or would this?
No, you don't
No,
have to come
okay.
back.
and I think it remains to be seen whether we're going to make the decision tonight. I mean, I think we should listen
Right,
to what she
sure.
has to say, and perhaps
Go ahead
tonight
and-
we will make the decision.
Okay, it's for the sign for Pet Supplies. And we were
And
here.
tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dottie Tuccio, and I'm with the sign contractor, Pro Sign Company. Okay, they're installing the signs, and they represent Pet Supplies, so we're here on their behalf.
Which is located,
So anyway,
where's the pet supply located?
I'm sorry?
Where's the
It's
sign
the old
going to
Rite
go?
Aid.
The old Rite Aid?
Yes, Rite
Okay.
Aid was there before, and now Pet Supplies is moving in. Now, when Rite Aid was there, they had 35-inch letters on the building. We were proposing 26, but we came down to 25. We went before the design review, and they were good with 18. We're still trying to get a little bit more than 18. We just feel that's just not enough, height.
And is
for
I don't know what you
That's the
just.
height of the
But no,
letters.
I'm not going to describe it elegantly, but this thing right here,
Yes,
that's staying the same size, correct?
yes.
So it's just different size lettering within the same.
Yes, and
okay.
before they had 35 inches, we're proposing 25 inches. So we're coming down a whole lot than what was there before. But the reason we're here is the design review meeting, they wanted us to go with 18-inch letters, and we just feel like we need a little bit more. We are proposing to, the front of the building there, we're going to really clean it up and put a whole plate through over the whole front of that building instead of just putting it where the letters are. We're going to run it along the whole front just to make it look nicer. So we're trying to make it look really nice, but we are asking for a little bit larger letters.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, what I don't have in front of me, and I apologize, I didn't do the research, is what does the current sign code allow for?
Oh, we are within codes. We're allowed 50 square foot. We are within the codes.
Okay, so, yeah, I remember,
They
50
didn't
square
care of
foot.
the height or anything. It was more the design review committee that cared a little bit more of the height, as long as we were within square foot, and we are. We're within codes.
Okay.
And can you tell me what height lettering would keep you within that square footage of 50 square feet?
What height?
Because while you're asking, I think you had mentioned that you had originally asked for 26-inch.
We were originally going to ask for 26, but we ourselves brought it down to 26, to 25.
25. And at 25 inches, you're at or below the 50 square feet of signage
Yes,
area?
we are at 50 square foot.
At 50 square foot. And the original, just to make sure I understand, the original Rite Aid,
Aid
it was
letters were
36-inch high?
35 inches, so we're.
Yeah, I know, they
coming
would be
down 10
grandfathered,
inches
but not
than
you,
what was up
the
there
new
before.
applicant wouldn't be. Okay.
Madam
And
President?
I do
Yes.
have, I just have some more sketches if you want them, just showing you the front
Yes,
of.
can you speak into the mic so that
I'm
everyone can
sorry.
hear you?
I have new sketches just showing you the back of the whole front, how we're going to try and make it look really
Okay,
nice.
you can bring those up and we'll pass it along. Everyone can take a look. Our township manager wanted to add something to
Sure.
this?
Kevin has no objection to what they've requested.
And
Oh,
do we
It's
have,
smaller than the current Rite Aid
And do
that's there.
you have any knowledge as to why the design review board was stuck on 18?
I believe that was just their opinion to go there, but Kevin has no problem with the objection.
Bob, do you know if that is a numeric requirement, or is that they have the discretion to set lettering size? Or John, do you know?
I don't know.
So, I mean, it's possible that there is, or perhaps the applicant knows, is there a lettering size requirement that in addition to the square foot, meaning the square foot is the requirement in zoning?
Not that I know of, as long as we keep it within
I'm
50
gonna look it
square
up
foot, the township doesn't care of the height, as long as we keep it within the square foot, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, that is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
We can.
It was
we can-
only the design review committee that wanted us to keep it at 18 inches.
We can have Kevin write that in the next meeting. We'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting then to answer the questions the board has.
yeah, what would help me, especially when there's an appeal like this, if we could have the minutes of the committee that, you know, set the restriction, whether it's design review board or any board for that matter, so that we have a basis to understand their decision. And then maybe in this case, I'm trying to pull it up now, but the actual wording of the sign code, because I believe there's a height limit on lettering. In addition to the 50 square feet of sign area, there is a letter height limit. And I don't have it in front of me. If I can pull it up in the next 30 seconds, I will. But I think it would be nice to have that. And, you know, I'll be
As
glad.
far as I know, I don't think there is, as long as we kept it within the square foot.
I'd like to recommend that we table this until the next meeting when Kevin's here, so we can get.
Second?
When is the store open yet?
It is not.
And when do
yet.
they
I'm
plan to open?
Not sure when it is.
We don't know.
I-
Okay. I just don't want to,
Oh, Rite Aid's not out there.
they're not completely.
So our next meeting is
Right, it's
December
open, yeah.
2nd, and we'll
Okay,
have
so we have
the
a little
information
time.
that has just been requested by some of my colleagues, and we'll make a decision then. You need not come then if you don't want to.
But we should. Are you saying that somebody should be here?
I mean,
Okay,
you'll be presenting the same thing again, but that's completely up to you.
right.
And in my, personally, I don't see any reason why this would be deleterious, but I haven't seen why it was denied, and I'm always a little worried about setting a precedent without meaning
Sure,
to.
I
So
understand.
I think we all need to see kind of what the reasoning was for not allowing
Okay.
it.
All right.
Okay?
Great. Thank you very much.
So we have a motion to table and a second. Is there any other comments about that? Do we have to do public comment on that? No. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0. The motion is tabled. Next, we have Finance and Audit with Commissioner Kevin Higgins.
So the first item on the agenda is the introduction of ordinance 2013-23, which is the adoption of the final comprehensive budget for 2014 V2 and establishing the township real estate tax and sanitary sewer rate. So, Bill, do you just want to provide a quick summary?
Sure. The budget itself is up on the township's website for anybody who would like to go take a look. Materially, version 2 is the same as version 1 in terms of the tax rate for next year, which is still set at 0% change, so it'll stay at the 3.7511 mils. The significant items that did change from the October 14th version, which was version 1, I highlighted in a memorandum that's included in the budget document itself. And I don't know, Jim, if you could pull it up on the screen, I could maybe step through that in just a couple minutes. As as we're switching there, I can start. The first item is just a cosmetic change. It's a presentation change in the financial forecast that came from Carfax. If you'll recall, the forecast itself before just had revenues, expenses, and then net revenues. And their recommendation, which was really good, it asked to break down the revenues and expenses into major categories. So now the forecast shows 3 major revenues, the real estate taxes, Act 511 taxes, and all the other revenues. So you can see out of those 3 categories how those numbers move over the forecast period. And on the expense side, the categories are broken down into salaries and wages, payroll liabilities, and benefits, as well as capital, debt, all other expenses, and transfers. So again, as you look out over the forecast period, you can see what's driving those numbers and how those are changing over the period of time. The other major item is, in these next 4 items were all things that have either been introduced or adopted since the budget, the recommended budget was published back in October. Obviously, the ordinance to purchase the Ardrossan property, or a portion of that property, has been introduced. So based on the input and feedback we heard last week, as far as incorporating some assumptions into the forecast on the impact of buying that. So after working on the Phase 2 work that is required in the open space policy, we took summaries of that information in a couple of the areas as it pertains to the forecast and plugged it into the forecast. So you can go to the forecast section to see what those numbers came out to be. On the sanitary sewer side, the initial recommendation showed a rather large increase in the rent to try to, that would have been necessary to move forward with the capital that was initially proposed. However, in light of the impact to the residents and the businesses, that was pulled back to a more modest 2.8% increase. And the corresponding capital program for the sanitary sewer for 14 was pulled way back too. And as we discussed last week during the public hearing, the plan for 14 will be to take a more holistic view of the sanitary sewer infrastructure and put a more complete plan together over a longer period of time to address it. The stormwater fund, I think actually at the October 14th meeting when the budget was initially presented, that was the night that was adopted. So now within the this budget, you'll see in the stormwater fund the activity presented for 14. And those numbers came directly out of the report that came from the consulting engineers, AMAC, that was vetted through the Stormwater Advisory Committee and then discussed in public as the ordinance itself was being deliberated. I did note in the memorandum and wanted to make clear that the dollars that are allocated for capital projects, at this point, it's a capital project budget. The specific projects themselves have not been identified. That'll be something that'll go through the normal process of evaluating. The projects will come back in front of the board, and most likely through the new committee that we were looking to fill earlier this evening. Then the other 2 items, which are minor, there's a new police canine special revenue fund and an $8 million settlement fund. And those 2 were created to track specifically those 2 programs. The police canine, with respect to the fact that that program is intended to not cost or not use any township resources, to be fully funded by outside private donations. So the best way to account for that is to establish its own separate fund outside of the normal operating general fund. So we set that up, and then the $8 million settlement fund, as we discussed in October, was created to track over time how those dollars are allocated for 2 reasons. First of all, to make sure they're in compliance with the resolution that the board passed, and then second of all, so that at some point in the future, there's a roadmap on how those funds were allocated and spent. So future finance directors can go back and see how that money was spent, and they don't have to go through mountains of paperwork to try to figure it out. And then included in the memorandum on the second page of it is two tables, one that just highlights version 1 and version 2 between the general fund and the sewer fund, because those are the two that had significant numbers changes. Primarily in the general fund, the salaries and wage category decreased by roughly $236,000 based on some payroll reductions and changes that have occurred over the last month. Additionally, a different approach on the capital plan, using some more dollars that are in the capital fund now rather than having it transferred out. So the net impact from version 1 to version 2 for the general fund in terms of revenues is an increase of about $142,000, and on the expenditure side, a decrease of about $430,000. So both numbers were moving in a positive direction for the bottom line, so to speak. And then in the sewer fund, as I touched on with the rent, the proposed rent rate decreasing significantly from what was initially proposed. There's a significant drop in the revenue assumption and then a corresponding drop in the capital. And so those are the major changes from version 1 to version 2. The rest of the budget is materially the same and goes through in quite exhaustive detail all of the line items and assumptions that are built into it.
Okay. I have two short questions. The sanitary sewer rent. So it's gone down from about $8 to $5.74, and then that causes us to have $1 million less to spend in 2014. So my question is, are we re-examining the program, or are we just pushing it out or spreading it out?
No, and I'll let Steve jump in as well. It'll require an examination of the program and the projects that need to be prioritized. And I think now with the stormwater, there may be some projects that could be done at the same time. So now that that's going to be online, making sure that if we've got to go into a certain area, we're not going in twice, that if there's opportunities there. And then.
But let's be clear, Bill, it's not going down. It's an increase of 2.8% from this year. It's a decrease from what you proposed in the first version.
Yes, the capital program is what's driving the fee. So it was a pullback on the capital program, and the fee is the change to the fee is what was corresponding to the decrease in the capital program. So
I guess my question is, are we just slowing down the capital spending, or are we not doing it?
I think as part of this, the magnitude of the problem that you have here
Yeah.
is huge, because again, we haven't done a lot of work in the sanitary system. And I think we got to look for the board for a policy that, and I think with a philosophical change, so we can't put Band-Aids over problems like we did on King of Prussia Road, where we knew there was a problem. And we decided, well, we'll just worry about it later, and it cost us much more by not doing it right the first time. And again, with the projects that Steve has identified, the number's big, very big. So I think a lot of that is to investigate, study it, and put a plan together of how we're going to do this a different way than actually raising it 37%.
So this budget with the lower increase doesn't really incorporate a new way of approaching it.
I think this is what we're going to work on, look for the
Okay.
board to establish that policy moving forward, is how we're going to address a lot of these situations.
Okay.
The idea was, I'm sorry, but the idea was, so we had a list of capital projects, and they were lengthy, and there were many, and it changes, and it gets added to monthly as we encounter things throughout our system. Some parts of the system are 100 years old. So as the manager has stated, we dropped back and said, let's study this situation. We still need to make some changes next year. We're still going to do some capital projects that need to be done. But let's look at this township-wide, come up with a plan that we can follow, and then present to this board to look for funding on the long term to take care of what we need to do.
Okay, makes sense. My second question was about the Ardrossan figures. There's a number that's not in there, and I was just wondering why it's not, and that is the, I don't know what it's called, but the park, for new development, the park and rec fee that we instituted. I didn't see it in there. So all new units about a year or two ago, we voted that we would, for all new development, there would be a charge for park and recreation to go towards our parks and recreation. And I didn't see that incorporated in here.
Yeah, that is missing right now.
Okay.
So to the extent that any houses that are developed in that area would be subject to that, that needs to be added.
Okay.
So I'll check with
I
Kevin
wanted
and
to
get
double
those
check because I thought,
calculations.
well, maybe it doesn't apply to this property for some reason, but,
Yeah, I'll check with the community development director and make sure
Okay.
if those need to be added, we'll make sure they're added.
okay, great, thank you.
But I don't think they occur next year, right?
No, it'd be more of an impact to the forecast, so for 15 through 19.
So I just want to be clear, just to make sure people understand. So the millage rate has no tax increase. The sewer rent is going up by 2.8%. And on top of it, you have the stormwater fee, which, if you're like me, it's an effective tax increase of over 13%. So, that's, to sit here and minimize the tax increase, I think is a little bit naive, because I got my little nice flyer, and I appreciate that, Bill, but I did the math. And because of this stormwater fee, I'm paying Radnor Township effectively 13% more than I did last year. So,
Commissioner, what option would you have to address the long-term issues, the sanitary issues? What would you propose us so that we wouldn't raise it 13%?
we could take that separately, Bob, especially, when I talk about my trees being community property and all
Well, I
that good
understand.
stuff.
No, I was just saying, if you had a plan of how we could address these issues without across the board zero, I'd be more than happy to look at it.
But anyway, so I'll make a motion to introduce the 2013-23.
Second?
All right, do we have any other commissioner comment or
Yeah.
questions?
Bob and Bill, didn't we get either a refund or a credit from RHM for an overbilling?
We did.
And is that in 13?
Well, yeah, and the credit itself actually makes budgeting in the sanitary fund somewhat difficult, because in the 3 years that I've been working on the budgets here, that we've gotten a credit every year. And it's usually several hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's just whether or not we want to realistically anticipate getting those credits year over year, which is kind of the way we've started to budget for it. But yes, for 2013, we received notification that the credit is, I want it somewhere in the ballpark of about 400,000. But in terms of a budget variance for 13, we had anticipating receiving some relief. So I think the positive variance, and I was looking at it this afternoon, is somewhere close to 80 to 90,000 positive variance in that fund, which will help. But the credit, it's not a dollar for dollar. Otherwise, the rent fee would have to be much higher, and then we'd potentially be overbilling if we kept getting the hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of credit every year. So it's a balancing act there.
And I think a lot of that goes back to the board. You should take credit in that, because that was one thing that you pushed, as well as CARFAC too, to look at how that was done. And I think those have paid dividends for that.
So just a brief comment from me on the, kind of after what Kevin just said. I came on the board, I tell this story a lot. I came on the board 7 years ago. And 7 years ago, the pipes in the township were 100 years old. And we were underfunding the sewer fund at that time, and there was money going out of the sewer fund at that time that we didn't know about. And essentially, the sewer fund is about $1.5 million short in terms of revenues over the last 10 years, because money was coming out of the sewer fund that wasn't for the sewer system. I think we should recognize that Bob's being asked, and Steve, to run a system in this township that's grossly underfunded. And this is a place for capital. This is a place, because the benefit, if you're putting new sewer pipes in, they're going to last more than 30 years. So this is a perfect case of using bond funding and non-electoral debt. I'm not in favor of debt, but this is a place where you need to use it, and I think we need to really aggressively address this. I watched us spend, I don't know, $500,000 on King of Prussia Road in 2 incidents, but if we had planned that as a project, it may have been less than that to do the entire road. So we're spending a lot of money. I believe, I forget what the multiplier is, but it's by the foot, and it's 150, 100, Bill, do you know the number we're paying per foot when it's an emergency versus non-emergency? I mean, Steve?
You could, depending on what facet of construction it is, we can be paying, depending on the facet, anywhere from 20 to 80% more for the work that's being done. So that last 200 feet that wasn't done several years ago, that almost cost us $500,000, could have been done at a much more reasonable price per foot as part of the last project.
Yeah, so I understated what we totally spent on
Right.
on King Prussia Road. And you know, again, this board has to make decisions that empower staff to do the right thing and to save money. And we knew about this problem 6 years ago, and we've talked about it. And I know Steve's been doing a lot of work in understanding the issue and running cameras through the pipes to understand the pipes that are about to collapse, and doing smoke testing. We did a lot of smoke testing years ago. But I just want to emphasize that, you know, while we all want to vote on a no tax increase, I remember in 2007 and 8 where we did no tax increases, and I don't remember the exact years, but we regretted it. We regretted it. We lost talent. We lost staff. We had a lot of frustrated directors at that time because they couldn't get the work done they needed to get done. So, you know, when I see this increase, potential increase on the sewer rate from I forget what the original rate was, 560, 590 versus 787, you know, I think we need to borrow money, we need to fix these systems, and we need to have a plan, you know, over a 30-year plan to replace the pipes in the township so that we're not spending 80% more than we are. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So, you know, I'm going to support the budget, but I just want to stress that, you know, there's no magic here. Things cost more year over year. We have done so much to control cost. This management has done so much to reduce cost. But you get to the point where when a pipe is 100 years old, we're not going to use a Band-Aid to fix it, literally a Band-Aid. We're going to need to dig that street and put new pipes in. And I want to see us move in that direction. So I hope that this is the last, you know, I only have one more year on the board after this, after 2014. So I hope that before I leave this board, we have a plan in place that will, in fact, address it, 30-year plan to maintain the system so we fully understand the cost over a long period of time. It's another one of these hidden liabilities that's not really on the books. But you know, I know it's there. A lot of us know it's there, but we're not quantifying it on the books. And I need to see that because I've been talking about it too long. So if we can keep moving in that direction. But, you know, this idea that we're going to pay a 2.8% tax increase, our taxes are still the lowest in terms of the county and the school tax. Our taxes are still the smallest piece of that tax pie, yet we have to maintain all the streets, all the sewer, all the stormwater, and have police and fire services and public works and all these other things. So anyway, I want to emphasize that while I appreciate not seeing the sewer tax go up, sewer fee go up to $7.87 per 1,000 gallons, I also recognize that.
John, just so you know, the $7.87 was what's proposed. The increase was $7.87.
Right.
They're only raising it $5.80. It's not
I realize that.
$7.87.
No, and that's what I'm saying, Bill, is that while I appreciate it only being $590, I think it's artificially low. And I think we're going to see a need to borrow about $10 to $20 million to rebuild the system, and then the debt service on that will cause that rate to go up maybe another $1. So
Well, we can make that one of our priorities for 2014 to really come up with a
appreciate
plan
that.
for that.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comment or questions about the budget? Any staff comment or questions? Any public comment? All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
So that's just the introduction, not the final passage, just to be
Right.
clear. The next item on the agenda is ordinance 2013-24, an introduction and adoption of the consolidated fee schedule for 2014. Bill, you want to hit any highlights, lowlights, whatever you want to sort of?
Well, we just touched on the sewer fee, so I won't touch on that one again. But this is the fee schedule that is required in our administrative code, as we do annually. we amend it by way of ordinance, and then any future adjustments in 2014 can be done by resolution. The process by which that we evaluate this is basically the fee schedule is under review every day, so we just add this to part of the budget review. Each of the departments goes through their respective categories and updates those as necessary. I think for the most part, the fees from 13 to 14 are remaining relatively constant. In any case, if there are changes, the fees are, those changes are identified in the fee schedule itself, where you have the 2003 rate, and then in the next column, the 2014 rate, so you can see the change year over year. And then if there is any kind of adjustment, there's a description included in there as to why the adjustment is being requested.
So I had a handful of questions. I didn't pick up on it. So there's a few spots where the fees are going down, like the temporary food establishment. Can you just give me a sense as to why they went down? If you need to get back to me on that. I mean, I know I put you on the spot without.
That's okay. If you have questions, if I can answer them, I will. If not, we'll get the department head and get back to you on them. On that particular one, I'd need to touch base with
All
Kevin.
right. How about some of these other ones, in particular zoning hearing board, where we've gone from a fixed fee to a fee plus a fee, an additional fee for each additional hearing? What's the logic there?
I can address that. I know Kevin did a survey of zoning hearing board fees, because I think the zoning hearing board fees, especially involving hearings that go on more than one night, involve a lot more cost, court reporter, et cetera. So he and I had a discussion, and I gave him some information of that way. Instead of having a flat fee, let's say it's $750 and you have 4 or 5 nights of testimony.
More to reflect our costs.
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
You can't cover professional
Yeah.
fees, Kevin, but just the cost of having the hearing for more than one night.
Okay, there was one other one, John, that, I kind of grasp this stuff, but I don't have it to the level of detail you have. And I know that when we've talked about the intermunicipal transfer of liquor licenses, we've kind of said, to a certain degree, that process we go through, I'll describe it as more of a formality because we don't have a lot of leeway in it. I see we're changing the fee. Do we have the discretion to do that for that?
Yes.
All right, I have a couple questions. First one is, there's no fee in lieu of for the shade tree in the fee schedule. We had not, actually, this board had not actually voted on how to do that. So I'm assuming since it's not in here, we'll do it through the ordinance when we amend the ordinance. But I'm thinking it might be smarter to do it in the fee schedule, so that it's, so that we can change it by resolution if and when we need to. So that's something I'd like to just throw out there, so that when we do amend the ordinance, we could say fee in lieu of as set forth in the fee schedule, and have in the fee schedule whatever we decide, which I think at the last discussion was $250, was the number we were throwing around, but we didn't actually take a vote.
Right. That was the recommendation of Shade Tree to go
Right.
with 250.
So I
I'd
guess,
rather wait, because I promised Jim Higgins I would make an analytical argument as to why I thought 250 was the wrong amount, and he was willing to listen. So I would like to have that opportunity before we vote.
okay, well, so all the more reason to keep it, to put it in here and not the ordinance, so that if you
Yeah, but I want to wait until we specifically address that and then put it in the fee schedule.
Okay, well, in any case, it's got to be in the ordinance. It would have to direct you to come here anyway, so the ordinance needs to be amended in some way. And when that happens, we can decide whether we want to do it. But I just noticed it's not in here, and I think it should be. The other thing I mean, there are quite a few increases in here, and I didn't think any of them were outlandish, but some of them are, well, I'll just go through a few of them. There's an increase for zoning fees when you put up a fence or when you do an accessory use. There's an increase in the sign fee for the design review board when you appear in front of them. There's an increase in the special event plan review fee. As we just talked about, there's an increase in some of the additional hearings in front of the zoning hearing board. There's an increase for liquor license transfer, an increase for grading permits, escrow accounts for our for the real estate tax certification or certificate that the treasurer obtains. And I have to say, when I looked through all of these, the fees that apply to developers and to, kind of businesses coming in here to make money, I don't have that much of a problem with. The fees that apply to individual residents, going to put up a fence or going to put up an accessory use, an accessory structure, or grading for a swimming pool, I'd like to try for us to keep those as low as possible. So this is just an introduction tonight, and obviously these were set forth by our community development department, so we can wait until we can talk to Kevin a little bit about them. But I'd like to see us try to keep the ones that apply to individual homeowners that are doing work on their home, to keep them as low as possible. My concern is, their projects are not for profit. Their projects are usually pretty small, and the costs to us are probably far greater when it's a bigger project. So I wanted to give that input, and I look forward to talking about it more at length when this is reintroduced or introduced for adoption when Kevin's here.
Madam
I'd just
Chair.
like to point out that we get a significant portion of our township budget, our revenues, from businesses. So we shouldn't treat them really that much differently than residents. I mean, if you look at what Bill put in on page 2, we actually get more money from Act 511 than property taxes.
And then my last question is about the real estate tax certification fee. And I was a little puzzled by the description, and I was wondering if someone, maybe Mr. Osborne, could explain to me what, I honestly have no idea what that fee is and what that work is. So if you could explain the process and what this fee is for, that would be very helpful. It's
Well-
page 16 of the fee schedule.
Well, when people go to seek a mortgage, either to buy a home or to refinance, the title companies get involved in it. And the title companies want to know whether the taxes are paid on the property. I provide them with a certification of what the real estate tax status is with that property. That's what happens. I do the work. It's at no cost to the township. And if you, basically that's it. I mean, do you want me to justify the fee? Is that what you're looking for?
I mean, what's curious to me is that am I right? It looks like it doesn't go to the township.
No, it goes to the
you?
treasurer, yes. It's
So-
been that way.
Uh-huh.
It's been a fee. I think Mr. Spingler could probably help us with how long that fee has existed at that level. It was the
It
9
probably
years I
goes-
was
it
here.
Probably goes back
I think it goes back
to
to
the
Mer-
time when Steve Norcini's second cousin, once removed, was treasurer, and his last name was Norcini.
Yes, it's been a long, long
And-
time.
And so then after that, it would be Mr. Merriman, Mr. Gleason,
And me,
Mr. Ehart,
Ehart.
and Mr. Osborne. And what always struck me as being odd, John, was the fact that the treasurer was able to take that fee money from the homeowner or from the title company or from the bank and convert it to his own use, even though the treasurer is compensated by taxpayers. Your salary is what, $26,000 a year. Your office is here in the township, and it's paid for by the taxpayers. the paper that you use to do the certification, the ink that you use to do the certification, the electricity that shines on the paper that benefits you, all is paid for by the taxpayers, but you and your predecessors are taking the money and pocketing it, and I don't think that's right. I think that money should redound and come to the benefit of the township.
Well, may I ask, is that practice all over Pennsylvania? I mean, yeah,
Country. So, but John, Mr. Osborne, can you just explain, if they don't get the tax cert from you, is there any other way they could get a tax cert?
Yes, yes, there is. There's a third-party company out there who does it. It's Data Trace. It's a division of Data Trace called Signature Solutions. I used to do the certifications for them, but they came into the township, and through right-to-know rules, they received the data for free. Now, I appealed it to the right-to-know office, and I believe I got an opinion saying that we didn't have to do that,
So
but...
That's a different issue, but, so I guess I support the increased fee, because when that fee was set at $10, I guess, what was the original fee?
Well,
I'm sorry.
I don't know what it was originally when it first was established, but it's been $10 for
Over 10 years.
25 years.
For 25 years. So if you just take the rate of inflation, I mean, come on. This,
Yeah, but John, they
Bill.
used to collect taxes, they don't collect taxes
I understand
anymore.
that, but
Yeah,
the
26.
tax certification still needs to be done, and it still needs to mean something. Because what you don't want to have is a house sell where you think the taxes are paid and they're not in fact paid. So if we nickel and dime this process,
What does that affect anything?
what it affects, if you don't have enough revenue to do the work, then you're not going to do the work
The
well.
house gets
So-
sold in 2 years, the county takes care of that, John. Nobody doesn't pay their taxes, trust me.
could I ask, John
But
Rice,
someone needs to
in your
certify.
experience, is this the way it's done on all townships that you represent?
Elected tax collectors have a certification fee that they charge.
Well, John,
So I support the increase in the fee because it's nominal.
Yeah.
I think this is, I mean, I've paid these fees to other towns, and they're
I-
usually more than this.
Let me just, the thing that's different about what happens here is that elected tax collectors, say in Lower Merion, they have their own staff. You know, they're sort of a separate entity. You have a blended type of a system here where township staff supports the treasurer, and it's a little bit different. But as a rule across this state, the elected tax collector, and now treasurers are called tax collectors under the first-class township code. They've changed that designation in the code. They're all called tax collectors now, but they have their own office and they collect that certification, and there's a wide range of what they charge.
And is this unique? I mean, are there other employees that get fees paid directly to them? I mean, do police get a check made to them when they get extra detail?
No, but, you know, they're employees. This is an elected office, so that, I think, is why
Okay.
the legislature has set up, under the tax collection law, there's certain types of compensation an elected tax collector can get. So you
So
can.
that work isn't as an employee,
Right.
that's as the elected treasurer, okay.
Right.
I get
These
it.
are the tax collectors' records that are being certified.
John, do you certify the school district and the county also, or just the
No,
township?
just the township.
Did you used to do the others?
Well, we used to do the school board, but Mr. Gleason disclaimed that.
I used to do the county until we went to countywide collection of taxes under
Right.
my leadership.
Right.
Well, John, in 2013, the 2012, how much did you get from the certifications total?
Well, I'd have to check my records.
Well, you
to
told
know
me you told me it was, there were a lot of resales, it was like $12,000-$14,000.
Yes, I would say portions of 13 were very busy and 12 was busy here in Radnor. There were a lot of refinancing going
But
on.
your total compensation for 2012 was almost $40,000, or over $40,000.
No, it wasn't that much, Bill.
Well, you get 26 from the township, 2,100 from the school district, and then you got 12 or 14 from the, you told me it was over $40,000. When I asked you last January what the income was before I decided to run, you said you made
I
$40,000.
told you it could be raised to that level.
Well, how much, you told me you took in like $10,000, $12,000 on this fee in 2012. Is that not correct?
I don't recall, Bill, what exactly the numbers were I threw at you. I mean,
Well, what are
you
the-
came in and you had a discussion.
Well, John, this is a little side business here, and you have to pay income tax, and you have to file it, that you took this income in. You don't know how much it was?
Well, we don't need
Well,
to establish that tonight.
Fair question.
Look.
Let him answer it.
I would like to know
I
For the
kind of,
how much you
I kind
took
of
in.
feel,
It's public record. People pay this fee, it's a public record. This isn't a private business where you not have to disclose how much you took in. No, I wouldn't.
I'll have to check my records to let you know.
But if you're asking us to authorize you to collect an additional amount, I think it's fair for us to, on behalf of the taxpayers, to know how much this amounts to for income to you in a year. It's public records, it's public
Over
information.
and above, it's not 40,000 or anything near that in
No.
certs. That's
No,
adding the salary.
That's right.
It's about $8,000 to $10,000,
Yeah. Well,
depending on, now the certs have gone into the tank in the last month and a half. I'm just not getting many. It's the holiday season. It always quiets down now.
one of the things.
And I don't know, it all depends on interest rates. If interest rates go up, it's going to go very quiet. And people won't be buying houses and they won't be refining.
one of
Now,
the-
I tell you what the tax collectors around the county are collecting. I'm the lowest at $10.
but John,
Nobody
they're-
else
they're-
charges
they're also-
$10.
They have all the records. They're collecting the taxes.
Pardon?
You're not collecting the taxes. The township, you're not involved in the action. You don't take the checks and you don't.
Well,
the township does that.
that's my salary.
No,
the
but you,
treasurer.
you have nothing to do with the tax collection in the township other than to take some envelopes or go to the bank, or you're not actually physically collecting taxes or involved in that process,
Well,
right?
we use TD Bank now as a
Yeah. But these other
treasurer.
people, they actually take the money in, they deposit it in the bank, and then in 30 days, they have to turn the money over to the township. You don't do that.
No.
No.
We have our deposit immediately.
Yeah. Well, one of the things.
Well, I don't know that we're going to solve this tonight,
No, but one of the things I'd like to hear from staff is if we raise this, or we even raise it to $20, if the tax collector could issue the sewer certifications and the stormwater certifications, if we centralized it, but that money would come to the township. The sewer certs and the stormwater certs would come to the township, but we raise the tax collection fee, and part of raising the certification fee is that he would be responsible for doing those two things. I don't know whether that's something the township would be interested in, but, you know, you could look at it.
Well,
maybe tell us
it
what you
raises
think.
the question of whether, we can't just raise fees, and this has nothing to do with Mr. Osborne. Elaine was going through the list here, how many increases there are. Are we really making an analysis that our costs have gone up to justify this? Because that's, the law on this subject, John, you and I have talked about this, the ROM case, we just can't stack charges on top of fees just in order to improve the financial condition of the township. They have to be directly related
To your cost,
to our costs.
cost of doing the work.
And,
well, and especially an argument that that's what everybody else charges should not be the basis of us raising our fee. So that, makes me
Look-
uncomfortable.
This is a very minor thing. I mean, this seems to be in your crawl in some way. I don't understand. It's been 25 years since this fee has been raised. It's something that's
But-
traditionally been done here in Radnor Township. I didn't start this.
I mean, I'm not objecting to raising this fee. My questions were more about what it is that happens, and my level of discomfort is more about the township not receiving any of that money.
Well, the township charges $30 for a sewer fee, and the school district charges $25 for their tax cert, and the certification for the sewer, $30.
Right, and that's a separate issue, and the township keeps that money.
That's correct.
So that's more where I'd like to do a little bit more analysis of.
Well, it has to be accurate what I'm doing. I have, when I first got here, I made a mistake for $58, and I paid it in myself. And I had one other mistake in 9 years, and the board forgave it.
Well, I think we can continue to have this conversation, and we can put this on our list, our growing list of priorities to look at in 2014.
I do have two questions before we finish.
Madam President, if I may, Dave, John, just to correct an issue.
Sure.
Don, sorry. It's $750 that we charge for a sewer cert, and then an expedited one would be 20? 20.
That's $7.50
That's correct.
for a certification.
That's correct.
And that money comes to the
That's per year,
township.
though.
That's if someone needs that certification.
That's per year.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. All right,
So
Don?
what would happen if you didn't do it? Who would have to do it?
It would probably be done by Amy Lacy.
It would be done by township staff, right?
Yeah.
So in some ways, essentially, you're
And it
doing-
wouldn't be for $10, I'll
Right.
tell you that.
And then $15 represents about 10 minutes of a professional's time at a rate that we would charge. So it doesn't seem like an inappropriate rate. I think to do what you want to do, Elaine, we would have to raise the fee to 25 and then, collect a portion of that fee. I don't know if that's better or worse, but
Well, I don't know what I want because I don't have a thorough understanding of these economics, but it's just intuitively to me seems like some of that fee should go to the township who's providing the infrastructure to make it happen. So
I think
don't-
the township was looking at a way to give a little more compensation to the treasurer, tax collector, without any cost to the township. That's what I think it is, and it's just been so long, and I spend a lot of time here, you all know that, and I try and be as involved as I can for the taxpayers and the residents of this township. I think it's part of the compensation for this job.
Well,
Just-
eventually, the commissioners should set a salary, and you really don't need to have anyone in the township building running a separate business and collecting separate fees. So you should, raise the treasurer's salary or do something and let the township collect all the monies that come into the township.
All right, I'd like to keep us moving. We will revisit this subject, but do we have any other questions or comments about the fee schedule?
Well,
Yes, I
I
have
wanted to know, the reason this one caught my eye was a lot others caught my eye is they were big increases. So the question I have for Bob and Bill is, are these increases necessary to accurately reflect the cost? What we discovered 3 years ago, I guess, when you and Bill did the first budget, was that the taxpayers were underwriting all these fees. And we've been trying to address that. So it's just a simple question. Do you feel you can justify all those increases?
I know from an expenditure standpoint, yes. The cost of the community development department and engineering department both continue to go up. So the justification for the expense side is there.
Great. And that-
Commissioner Nagel, on the engineering side, Commissioner Schaefer had noted the increase in escrows. Because what we're finding out is that we are constantly, depending on the project, we are constantly going back to the applicant because they're such small increments and they're large projects. So that's why on the major subdivisions, that escrow was increased. And the grading permits, again, we are just looking to cover our costs, whether it be inspections in-house or by our consulting engineer, our township engineer. So just answering specifically on grading permits, subdivision land development, they were all based on making sure the township was not underwriting applicants as they came in.
And similarly, I'd ask John the same question. Have your costs gone up, the cost of doing your job gone up, that justifies the fee increase?
Well, there's always the cost of labor, John, and how do you measure that? That's what negotiations take place at when contracts are up. The only contract I have is with the electorate. I try and do the job the best I can. I've lost a third of my cert income to Signature Solutions, and I'm sure that it's costing the title companies more than $10 to get it from Signature Solutions. They like it because Signature Solution, when they give the assignment to them, they get all the fees that are out there. There are fees like the sewer. Sometimes some townships, there's water is supplied by the township. There's lighting. There's fire hydrants. There's all kinds of fees that are out there, and Signature Solutions does it in a one-shot deal, and the title companies like that they don't have to go to 5 or 10 different places to find out what is required of a property to keep up their payments. Now,
How does
We know-
John, how does Signature Solutions get the information?
they come in here with a right-to-know request, and we created a report for them that we never had done before, and they get that they get all that stuff. So they do come in for certs in the beginning of the year, but once we get through the discount period, that's when they come in to get their.
Okay.
It's because here in Radnor, 80% of the people pay in a discount.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comment or any
Yeah, I
questions?
had one question. Didn't we ordinarily do this by resolution, and perhaps I missed that? Did we? So now if we were to change it, we'd have to go back and make that change by ordinance. But I was under the impression that typically we do this by resolution.
No, start by ordinance, and then you can change it by resolution.
So even annually, it's an ordinance each year.
Yeah, we added, Don, we added in the ordinance, I think 2 years ago, the ability to amend this by resolution during the year.
Okay. Well,
So-
for what it's worth, I interpreted that every year we would just make a resolution. But this is fine, too. I mean, I don't see any need for this to be done by ordinance. I would just do it by resolution once or as many times a year as you need, but I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, any other commissioner comment? Any other staff comment? Any public comment?
Good evening, Jim Schneller, St. David's. It seems that some of you have some great comments regarding personal type fees or more family type fees, and some of you have good comments regarding business related fees. And I think there's enough of a foundation for you to table the matter and get a better explanation, or perhaps get a more specific case by case look at what's going up and what should and what shouldn't, with just some more detail amongst yourselves and the public. Nobody's here tonight. And people, I'm afraid, have gotten accustomed to you raising the fees every year. I don't think they went up too often in the 90s, and I don't think they went up every year. And if there's comments like I've heard from the commissioners, you better believe that there's comments out there from the experts. And so if this was allowed to percolate a little bit longer, you'd probably come up with a lot of good comments. My comment is that the zoning hearing board fee, went from, I think, $500 to $1,000 back in 2010. That's a tremendous impediment to what would be citizens whose lawyer might not be in the loop, or who might try to do it themselves, and who are completely obliterated from even walking in here. I'm the only citizen who's tried it, I think, in 4 or 5 years with the zoning hearing board. And frankly, that's a bad example, because I've come in with items that impress the zoning hearing board as just a guy who has he's got general complaints. But if a landowner wants to come in front of the zoning hearing board, they should have a pretty free path. I think John would vouch for the fact that there should be some kind of due process for someone who's going to have a fence put up 10 feet from their nose and wants to appeal the zoning decision and will be repelled from doing that. So what I would request in that regard is the fact that the zoning hearing board fee shouldn't go up this year. I don't know, I haven't checked the list. I say it's going from $1,000 to $1,300. I request you not do that, because it's gone up for 2 years. I like the extra hearing fee. If they're going over to a second hearing, great. So could you please table it? Take a look at some of these details. I bet you half of the fees have that kind of meat to them.
Thank you, Jim.
I think what he just said, Elaine, is consistent with what your first point was, and that is we ought to try to find ways to not increase fees for the residents. Businesses are one thing, but residents who want to add an addition to their home or do something else, we ought to really find a way of controlling the increases. And I'm looking here at the zoning There's 7 or 8 categories here. It's really very, very expensive to obtain zoning relief. Here's one.
Well, I will note that the single-family and two-family dwellings, there is no increase.
Yeah. But a restaurant that wants to add, well, I won't go into it because we've gone around this long enough. Maybe at our next meeting, we can really look closely at whether some of these increases are necessary.
And to sort of augment that point, to me, it's less about business, non-business, but it's about the scale. Like we have, Jim accurately pointed out, we have priced the everyday folk out of using our services. Those that have, when people are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in a business, asking them to invest $500 more for additional meeting isn't that much of a problem, but asking the everyday folk to invest this kind of money for everyday problems is problematic for us, and that I do think we
The
have to address
500,
it.
you think a $500 fee is problematic?
I don't know what the number is. It's the spirit of what you said that is accurate. And
But I have a
think we
question
to look
about
at
that then. So what you're suggesting is that the rest of the taxpayers should underwrite the expense of that person coming into the township and getting a service?
I wouldn't word it that way. I don't know that that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have to match our service to the demand and recognize that not everybody can afford to do these things. And using that simple example of a fence, that's an everyday problem for people of modest and low income, and we've given them a mechanism to resolve that, and that mechanism is outside of their grasp.
But that fee is $75.
Okay,
So-
there's a lot of different fees, though, that are substantial for
But-
events like
But
Madam
this
President-
assumes that they're
Yeah.
doing something not by right. So if they're putting a fence up by right, they don't need
No,
to
you
go to the
get a
zoning hearing
permit
board.
fee.
Well,
No,
they
right.
need a permit fee,
Right.
but
you're
just,
saying-
I
okay.
want to remind everyone that a few years ago, we were not charging enough to cover all the engineering staff time and this additional solicitor and experts that we had on staff for those meetings, so.
Bob, did you have a comment?
Sure. I understand the concern with some of the fees, but also there's some of these expenses we have to recover as a township we can't subsidize. And I mean, I know Jim's comments are, but I mean, Jim has filed quite a few frivolous and pretty much just ridiculous, in my opinion, appeals that, we spend an awful lot of money from the solicitor's time and that we have to recover some of those fees, and we just can't continue to go on in those particular areas.
Bill, when you get the new software, will it help you? I mean, it's to a certain degree, I know you're doing an analysis, but the new software, I would think, should help you put together a more robust, rigorous analysis to really drive down to the cost. Am I inaccurate or accurate?
That would definitely be one of the goals, to get to a programmatic, more programmatic type of budget where people are tracking their costs based on these types of activities, which then can be reported back.
I agree with exactly what John said. You should not be subsidizing the activities. If a resident his choice, her choice of a project costs the township $1,000 to administer, they should be paying it. The business shouldn't subsidize them. The rest of the community shouldn't subsidize them. That's the cost of doing business. Now it's got to be reflective of the cost of doing business.
Right. Here's, though, a counter-argument to that some of the reason why we have these high costs is because we are putting significant burdens on people. And we have to be careful about the burdens that we put on people because they affect the community disproportionately. So there are some people in the community that have difficulty utilizing these services. There are some people that have no difficulty at all. And when, the perfect example is that there was that example of a resident had a stormwater issue in the first ward, and they said that they had something like $6,000 worth of construction and $7,000 worth of engineering and law fees in order to get the project through here. So we have to recognize that part of why we have made some of these things too expensive for some of the people in the community is we have put a lot of burdens that are not easy for the ordinary folk to understand, and we've created an unequal mechanism for people to resolve that. So we're not going to resolve it tonight, but I think there's a lot of merit to the point that Jim made.
Just to add to Don's comment there, I think, he makes a good point. The issue is, and I know we've tried to work with Steve and with Roger and with Kevin to try to help residents. However, some come in with drawings that are done by a landscape architect that are not engineering drawings. So those go back on multiple reviews. So I think a lot of that, we've tried to encourage people to come to us first to kind of help them through, because they will spend a lot of money going through the process if they don't have the appropriate drawings and that. So that's why we try to encourage a pre-meeting with Kevin, which includes or Roger or with Steve, to help people understand the process, which I think goes back to a lot of this is we'll help residents with these costs or work with them. We just try to encourage them to come talk to us first, because I think we'll save them an awful lot of money up front and having to go through these multiple processes.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this issue? Now, I don't recall, Kevin, did you move to introduce this?
I did. I don't recall if there was a second, however.
Somebody want to give a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It has been introduced by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Resolution 2013-141, amending Resolution 2013-113 to revise the 2014 minimum municipal obligation. So, Bill, if you could just talk us through it, I think it's pretty straightforward. But then at the end of it, could you tell me whether or not you're simply changing or acknowledging the change to the MMO, or are we actually proposing funding a reduced amount in the revised budget, since I didn't get a chance to look at the revised budget and pick it up?
Okay, so this resolution is amending the one that the board adopted in September, which was based on preliminary payroll numbers. Now that we've gone through the budget process, we know we've had several changes in our payroll assumptions in terms of headcounts and staffing changes. So what this does is it memorializes where our estimated payroll numbers are for 14 and applies the MMO percentages and calculations to those to come up with a revised obligation. And I'm not sure I entirely understood your question.
So
Kenneth.
this is a minimum.
Minimum.
So is the budget now, the revised budget that you gave us tonight, is it based on the minimum, or did you keep the number at 4175214?
Yeah, the budget reflects the number in the resolution tonight. So it reflects the $4,139,918.
So you took down the contribution, the proposed financial contribution next year by $35,000.
Right, and that's a result of payroll going down by
Right,
roughly
but you could have
200
chosen to fund more than the minimum.
We could have, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to understand. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Can I just ask a quick question about the police side? The lower number is due to the new hire who came under a new contract. Is that because our pension, the pension obligation on our part is less because of the new negotiated terms? Does that make any sense?
Well, I think, if I understood correctly, I think the answer is no.
Okay.
Because the payroll for the new officers, the same percentages. So if you're looking at the actual math, for the police plan, we pay 14.833% for every dollar of payroll for the normal cost. That's applied to officers regardless of when they were hired.
Okay, so that doesn't matter that the terms are different in his
Right,
his
where they
contract.
are different are the new officers are contributing 5% of payroll. So they're sharing in a larger, their piece of the pie is a little bit larger than those officers that were on prior.
Okay.
Who are only contributing 3%.
I see, okay.
Make
All
a
right.
motion to introduce, approve Resolution 2013-141.
Second.
Any other commissioner comment or staff comment? Any public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Next, we move on to Public Works and Engineering with Commissioner Jim Higgins.
Yes, we have some items tonight. The first item is item F, discussion and selection by our board of the plan for the North Wayne Field Basin Reconstruction Project. There is a memo on the public record and in our package by Mr. Norcini explaining what's going on. So, Steve, if you want to summarize what's in the memo, that would help.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Really, and I'm actually going to kick this off to Ryan Cummins from Chagrin Valley Engineers in a moment. But what we have here, items F, G, and H are all really interrelated. About a year ago, we went through different basin versions for a repair and replacement at the North Wayne Field. The existing system at the North Wayne Field does not function as it should. We know that there's significant funds that would be needed to bring that up to what it was originally built as. And my recommendation to this board is that we take that money that we would use to repair that and place it towards a better fix, a fix that will actually help the residents more. And being that that's an underground system, I would also request, literally in perpetuity, maintenance funds for that, because that was one of those systems that was installed and just walked away from. So that's part of the reason we're in the situation we are. So in your packet, you have the 6 versions that Ryan Cummins devised for that North Wayne Field area of different basins, along with their costs. And he's going to go through them with you. I did make a recommendation in my memo for option E. And then following this, if the board does select the appropriate a basin, we follow that up with authorization for Chagrin Valley Engineers to prepare the final design and bidding documents. These are all in preliminary design. And then subsequent to that, I would ask that we can request to receive bids. So what that would do, in essence, would be allow Chagrin and staff to take that through design, go right to bid, and then we will be back with this board with the sealed bid price. And with that, I would turn it over to Ryan to go through those different basin versions, if it so pleases the board.
Hi, Ryan, thank you for being here, and apologies for the last time you were here till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then we sent you back.
That's quite all right. I know that you have a packet. I have these options on a PowerPoint if you would like, or we can just go through them, your packet, whatever is.
I think it'd be helpful to do it in the PowerPoint, yes, so that people at home can watch what we're talking about.
Okay, so talking about North Wayne Park, this is really the guts of this PowerPoint is the same as what I had presented back in April, the different options. Just in general, the park, has Steve alluded to, currently has maintenance problems, has not been well maintained. A good amount of money would be required to bring it into maintenance, bring it up to correct its issues. There's approximately just over 40 acres that drains into that area. And you can see the outline of the current underground storage system there. This does represent only about 8% of the Gulf Creek area as measured at Poplar Avenue. So as I had pointed out back in April, this would be an incremental improvement. It should not be seen as a solution to flooding forever at Poplar Avenue. But it is an improvement in an area that you have available to make an improvement, and in an area that is already requiring maintenance to be addressed. And that's just a quick slide of the area that drains to Poplar Avenue. So you see that it extends up quite far, a total of just over 600 acres.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
You had mentioned that about 40 acres currently drain into this area.
Yeah, so
and
this,
that is only 8% of the Gulf Creek area.
Yes.
Is off-site of this location, is there a way to increase the capture of more of that Gulf Creek area? Like if we were to add new stormwater pipes and new systems?
To capture more of the Gulf Creek
To bring
area
more
at
of it in?
north at the park?
Mhm.
I would say probably not, just because of the elevation and where the park is located. You don't have a lot of opportunities there to do that. again, just some items that we had hit on. The existing system was constructed back in the 1990s. It's approximately 1 acre feet, so that's a measure of volume. If you had an acre in size, 1 foot deep, or just around 49,000 cubic feet. There's about 46 acres that comes that way, and the basin, even if it was working properly, would be overtopped at a 2-year storm. And it does not provide any water quality features as it was constructed before the municipal Phase 2 requirements. As far as the work that we had done, we were asked, kind of just if you had the whole park or that whole area at your disposal, what kind of things could be generated, could be done there. And if you were to do that, you could get up to 19 acre feet of storage. That it's quite an increase over the current 1 acre approximately. And that we also identified the need for an independent outlet of that system as well. This is option A. Again, one of the options that utilize the entire park, making it into a dry detention basin. Option B, slightly smaller and available in the storage you could create, mostly dry with a wet basin towards the bottom. Option C, basically the same thing, just handling the outlet of the water a little bit differently. Then we were asked, well, if you wanted to stay kind of within the existing footprint, what could we do? If we took out the underground system and made it an open system, what could you do there? Probably should mention, the benefits of having an open system are the maintenance. The underground system requires specialized equipment and has a lot of safety concerns with workers getting in there. The open basin you could use normal everyday equipment to do that, and your maintenance would be much simpler.
So D is open.
D is open.
Okay.
It creates, I think, just over 2 acre feet, so we're basically doubling the capacity of what's there currently. It allows the fields to operate as they do today, basically.
And can you describe what that looks like? I mean, if you're walking and this is just looks like a big ditch?
It would be a big depression in the ground, approximately 8 to 10 feet deep.
Is it fenced off? I mean, how does that work?
Absolutely, you would want to have some fencing around it as part of the final design to be able to because it will fill up with water during storm events, and at that point it's a safety concern. So you do want to control access to that, so there would be fencing.
How
manner.
deep would it fill up? How deep is the depression?
It's approximately 8 to 10 feet deep.
8 to 10. So we have other, I've seen, I mean, in the township, we have other open basin systems that were put in as part of developments, and they don't have fences. So what makes this different?
Public.
Because we're doing it, or because there is an increased inherent danger because of the depth, or?
It's a public area.
I understand that.
Commissioner, that was our requirement, because this is next to a ball field, because it's in a park, and honestly, because we know that it will take water. Some of the basins that were installed back in the 60s and 70s, and a lot of the land development that came through the township, if you look at them in a big storm, a lot of it is a pass-through. There's what we call a short circuit. There's not much retention. Water goes in and it goes out relatively quickly. We know that, Ryan gives us his chart where we can look at the water level as the rain event increases. So knowing that this will contain water, that's a requirement we have regardless of our code, which may also require it.
Yeah.
And just one more question. So on this picture, the 2 squares behind the depression, is that the tot lot? What is that?
Yes. These exhibits are conceptual in nature. The larger of the rectangles, I believe, is the tot lot playground area, and the smaller square is the existing brick structure
Okay.
that's there.
And then this, over on the right-hand side of this drawing, that's the gravel parking lot that still stays as a gravel parking lot in this version?
We have that, I believe we have that paved. I think in option E, we included that parking lot to be paved
Paved.
and stormwater quality features to be installed there.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure,
The prices don't include the land, is that accurate?
that is correct.
And Bob or Steve, do we have details on the land?
Yes, we have a lease agreement with the school district, so that's something we'll be reviewing with John. But the current system was put in there on the school property, so this would be something that I believe, based on how this agreement's written, we're going to be responsible for that improvement. I think Steve's reached out yet to Leo Barnaby to make them aware of this, so I think once there's a design determined by the board, we'll reach out to the school district. and
So you
let
don't
them
think there'll be a land cost, but
I-
there'll be some legal work to determine that we have the authority to
Correct.
do this?
I'd be surprised, because if there was an issue, the school district would have to be responsible to put this in, and I'm sure they would.
Commissioner, the way I couch this and the way I see it is, we're replacing a failed system. So we were given that permission at one point in time to install the previous system. We are just replacing that with one that will work.
But would that apply with A, B, and C, or just with the options that,
A, B, and C would be different, and then depending how this board went, I would, again, go back to the
D,
school
E, and
district.
F pursue, under the logic that you just identified?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The water that would be held on site would be there for about 4 days, correct?
I
you would-
don't have the calculations readily available, but yes, I would say.
Typically, that's what, so we'd have a
Couple days, I would say.
8 to 10 feet of water for 2 to 4 days, but no more than 4. 4 would be the limit of,
I think that it would drain down faster than that, yeah.
and then roughly, it seems that what we get is about on D, E, and F, about a 50% improvement up to the 10-year storm, and then something around less than a 10% improvement on those bigger storms. So the net effect on Gulf Creek for the smaller storms would be something, 50% of 10%, which would be around, a 5% decrease in the peak flow.
Yeah.
And for those larger events, it would be more like 10% of 10%, or 10% of 8%, which would be like 0.8% decrease in the total.
Yes, in general, as each basin, D, E, and F, stores more water. So in general terms, what you're doing is correct, but it would change slightly with each.
So there's more impact, the impact would seem to be more at the 20 to 50-year storm than at the 100-year storm. That's the way I look at this.
That's correct. It's definitely, since we do not have enough volume to control the storms as we would like from the 1 year through the 100-year,
Right.
with the smaller basins, D, E, and F, those options, you're going to see more dramatic control in the lower storms and fading off to less control at the larger storms.
Okay, thank you.
Are people having problems at that lower storm level, or are we just wasting money for a solution that isn't going to deliver a benefit?
No, I believe that people have reported having problems at lower storm levels. That the basin overtops, comes down the street, and then impacts the homes along North
Yeah.
Wayne.
And those lower storm levels are significant events. A 10-year event is a huge event. A 20-year event is a significant event.
That's correct.
They're not insignificant.
That's correct.
So 3 other questions. These are for staff. Why not do this as part of the utility? Why not make this the first marching order for the for the new group that we appointed tonight? To me, that's the logic of this, that we task that group to prioritize. We are choosing from, all the options are not good, and we're choosing the best of those options. And to me, we rely on that group to advise us that D, E, or F is the best choice. So why not do that?
Commissioner, this, in my opinion, this has been something on the books for over 2 years. When I came here and the North Wayne Field Basin was brought to my attention, we had it televised and we analyzed it and saw what shape it was in. All of these projects are through preliminary design. Their next step is final design. So not trying to circumvent the committee, To me, this is an item that is a replacement that's needed. Even though it is a capital project, it's not a new and could be pulled out of the rotation, if you will, of the many capital projects that we have. Because this is an existing problem, we did not fund it last year, and it is, in my mind, we are going to repair broken infrastructure, if you will.
But the cost is 6 times or 3 to 5 times the repair cost that we already approved. So I don't view this as a repair. I view this as one of the first projects for the new authority that we created. But-
I'm sorry, I should couch it as it is a replacement of infrastructure that is no longer performing.
Yes, to me, that's why we created this group. So I think we're making a mistake by doing this outside of the group. My sense is that this should be part of what the group does. Arguably, the first thing they do, and arguably it could be communicated to them that it's a priority for us, but to do it outside of that group is a mistake to me. And part of that is that we still have to control expectations, which I don't think we've done a good job of, and we still have to identify metrics. So the way that we're going to measure whether this thing is successful or not. And to me, if we do this outside of the group that we just created, then it didn't make sense for us to create that group. So I could see myself supporting this, but I would rather see this in the context of the other projects that we would look at over the course of the year.
Don, this problem and project preceded the formation of that group by years and years and years. Officer Bruno is in the audience. He can tell us when this basin stopped functioning and when the flooding of his property and the other properties on Gulf Creek occurred. The creation of our Stormwater Advisory Committee, I won't call it an afterthought, but it's the tail to a problem that this North Wayne Field Basin improvement manifests is example A of the problem. Now, that's issue one. Issue two is the metrics and how are we going to evaluate the cost benefit. Maybe Brian can talk to us about where is the water going to come from that will go into this basin, and and maybe we can at the proper time talk about the AT&T parking lot, which is to the south. But let's maybe get an answer to that question, Ryan.
The water that comes into this basin crosses underneath the septic tracts. There's a culvert, a single culvert there. It is the area south of the tracks. As I said, it's about 41 acres to the south. It includes a portion of what you referred to as the AT&T site. There's also a good amount of residential, mostly residential area is what it comes from, but there is some amount of office and commercial there as well.
The residential area, if you were to trace this, there's a street called West Avenue. Let's see where we are here. The AT&T lot. Do you have a pointer there?
Is that?
An electronic pointer?
Well, the line does it. To the right of the
Yeah,
line is AT&T, to the left line is the residential.
Okay, so a good bit of this field that is draining is the North Wayne Field itself,
That's correct.
the culvert from the AT&T lot,
Yes.
and the pavement of West Avenue, which gets,
Well, as you can see, it's the dark line. Can I step
yeah, go ahead. Well, where's that
No,
pointer?
you
How's,
might-
If you
where's
use
the mouse?
you can
Oh,
use
okay.
it, right, so there you go.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this dark line represents the limits of the drainage area. So here's west. Okay, so it is pretty much all of west. But then there is also I'm sorry, and I can't read that.
Bellevue?
There are other residential streets in that area. The culvert itself comes in just down towards the lower portion of this area here.
Yeah.
And this is the park itself that drains that way.
All right.
So the AT&T, let's see, that would be kind of right in there.
Yeah.
So can we flip to option E, which is the one Steve recommended, and hear about that one specifically?
All right, so we just talked about option D. It was existing, we have 1 acre-foot of storage. Option D was 2. Option E allows us to create almost 3.4 acre-feet of storage. We do that by extending the detention area up towards the fields. We implement a 250-foot outfield fence to maintain the use of the field, but then we take the excavation right up to that and around that. So by doing those things, we get up the extra storage and allows us to control. Just a second. So we
With a
have
250-foot fence, can the middle school use this field?
It's a lot of automatic home runs.
We did talk to Mrs. Cohen about the usage at the park and a fence at that length for center field, right field, left field, and she seemed to think that would be okay with the groups that do use it.
For Little League? No. Yeah, okay.
Can you describe what this looks like for a person walking in the park? Is this covered or open?
It would be grassed, grass depression, again, 8 to 10 feet deep. The bottom would be sloping towards the low end.
Ryan, if I may?
Sure.
If you could point out to the commissioners, as you come off the stone parking lot, your contour lines denote there's going to be a slope up, a flat spot, and then down. Maybe if you walk them through a cross-section.
Oh, okay.
As they come up from the parking lot.
Okay. So let's, as Steve suggested, let's come from the parking lot. This would be the existing surface down here. You notice we just have the dashed, these are elevation contour lines. Each, if you go from one to the other, you've either raised or lowered a foot. In this particular case, we've raised a foot. So as you are walking towards the baseball field, what this would have is a rise, and then we have a flat spot at the top, and then it would descend down into the depression. This would be the bottom of the detention basin area, and then you would come out of that back up a slope back to the existing grade, which is where the baseball fence would be placed. So the excavation would be confined to this area, and then whatever work would occur in the parking lot, which I believe in this particular estimate we had included paving as well as adding water quality, some sort of BMP, best management practice, for water quality in the parking lot area.
And there's a fence around this entire structure or non-structure.
It's not shown on this conceptual plan, but yes, again, I think it would be wise to have some sort of fence or fence off, even if you use the outer top of the embankment as a walkway of sorts, you would have some sort of fence along that.
Wait, is that what that white line is a walkway?
This is the top of the embankment. It makes
okay.
perfect, you could have a walkway up there.
So, and how do the people get from their cars to the baseball field? There's a path.
Yeah, we would have to incorporate some sort of path, and these contours, as we get into final design, we would change and incorporate that path in. We have questions about whether to work out during the final design about, does the tot lot stay there, does the building stay, could things be maybe moved to other locations and still maintain the workability of the park, but allow better access from the parking lot and pedestrian access.
And for the homes that are along this fence line of the park, their view or what they see, the only change will be the contour of the land and a fence.
That's correct, and there's already a contour there.
Right,
There's
there
already
is.
an embankment there,
Yes.
and also you have the obstructions of the buildings, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the homes up in this area would really not see any difference as they looked out onto the park. This area would still be the same, except for the baseball fence.
And I'm correct then that, getting back to the drainage field, the 46 acres,
Yeah, it enters right here.
all right, is that all, where's the piping? Where would the piping be?
This is the existing culvert that comes in under the tracks. It would come into the basin here. What would be worked out as part of the final design, there would be an outlet structure probably in the low area here that would then connect to the existing storm sewer system, which is here and then goes off down the street, down the driveway.
And the pipe that the culvert pipe,
From
that-
underneath SEPTA,
yeah, that will be,
that will be maintained. That's an existing structure that
Yeah.
we would not touch, no.
and it's big enough in diameter to make this construction cost of $606,000 worthwhile. That is, what I'm getting at is,
It conveys the
the dr-
40 acres across it,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
because that's been a chronic problem, and Mr. Bruno can attest to that clogs, and it's something we've got to maintain all the time. The other question I had was, in your memorandum, Steve, you talk about the exit pipe to Poplar Avenue. I'm sure Don wants to know about this. On page 2 of your memorandum, you talk, I'll read the third paragraph, second sentence. These 3 iterations are all also similar in that they would require the storm sewer that runs from the basin to Poplar Avenue to be increased from 18 inches to 30 inches diameter. That sounds like a big undertaking.
That's correct.
Actually, that's one of the reasons I'm a fan of these later versions, because, for lack of a better term, we have a patchwork quilt of piping that is in the driveway to the park, on North Wayne Avenue, and the pipe that exits the basin. And to marry this to the project that was already approved, which is the realignment of the Poplar Avenue pipe, would make really good sense to me from not just an engineering standpoint, but from a common sense standpoint. So we have a new basin, and for this basin to achieve those numbers in those charts, we would have to replace that pipe. And that's fine, because we're also altering the pipe that discharges into the stream at Poplar. And this would give us a chance to actually start to, again, repair some of the other issues we have there in that driveway, in North Wayne, in Poplar, and all the way to the outfall.
All right, paint me a word picture here of the construction for this 30-inch pipe. It starts at the orifice, the southern or the eastern end of the new basin,
Start
right?
approximately right there.
And it would go underground, so we would be just tearing up that parking lot, that alleyway. And then what do we do when we get to North Wayne Avenue?
We would hang a right and start bucking grade as we go towards Poplar, and then turn and go down Poplar.
But you're going under North Wayne Avenue.
That's correct.
So that's a PennDOT permit.
That's
And
correct.
it's a big constraint. Is all that
this is-
cost included in the 606,000? Well, I don't know.
Yes.
No, that's all included.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and one last, is the outlet then at the Poplar Avenue Bridge, or are there 2 outlets into the stream?
More than likely, we would like to do that as one, but that's one of the things that would be part of the final design is the exact configuration. If we marry those 2 projects together, and we're sure that both of them are actually going to happen within close proximity to other, do we do it as one pipe or do we do it as two? My preference would be to do it as one.
Okay. All right.
Can you, oh, go ahead, Kevin.
I have two questions. So the least expensive alternative on here is basically 550,000. This is 600,000. What am I getting in layman's terms for the additional 50 grand? And then conversely, you've got projects in here for 1.4, 1.5 million. What am I giving up for the 900 grand?
Okay, so for the cost difference between D and E, what you're getting is you're getting basically a 50% increase in how much water you can store in that location. What you're giving up between D and E is you're giving up some amount of restriction on the use of the baseball field. You're putting in a fence at 250 feet, so there's some amount of restriction there. Between the first options, A, B, and C, and these later options, what you're gaining is or what you're not giving up is the park itself. Because the first three options would require turning the entire park into a detention basin. So there would be no.
What about F?
No. F is is similar to D and E, except instead of having sloped inner walls of the detention basin, there would be a vertical concrete wall built. So there would not be any internal slope. It would be a straight vertical concrete wall. Allows you to store more water, much more expensive, also more of a maintenance issue going in perpetuity into the future. So that's why I think that the option that's been probably the most preferential would be option E. It allows you to keep the park as a park by and large. You get the most out of the area that you have, and also improves your maintenance.
And you think that storms, this will fill up, but it drains pretty quickly, and most of the time it's going to be a grassy ditch, basically.
Yes, most of the time it's going to be grassy. Again, that's how much, how you maintain it, just as the park itself. But it will be an area.
When you say maintain, I mean, do you have to mow it?
Oh, yeah.
So it's not so steep that you can't mow it?
That's correct.
So Ryan, do you mind if I just press you on that?
Sure.
Because I wouldn't know that that's the way that question should have been answered. If it is, tell me.
Okay.
But the design that you have for a system like D, E, and F requires it to hold water. The reason that you're suppressing the peak flow is because you're holding it.
That's correct.
So ideally you would hold it forever, but you can't hold it forever because you've got other constraints. So that basin would likely be filled for days during these peak
Well,
events.
what you're doing is when you have a peak flow, you're familiar with the hydrograph, obviously. It's if you were to graph out how that storm would look versus time, you would see that it would, obviously the flow is more in the middle and then it goes to zero. So what you're doing is you're making that peak not be so much of a peak, okay? You don't want to hold the water forever. You just want to hold it long enough so that what the stream sees is a more consistent level of flow. It's not a very high flow and then back to very low flow. You're stretching out the length of time. So you don't really want to hold it forever, but you want to hold it there for probably a couple days.
Yeah, I meant forever kind of figuratively,
Yeah.
that you want to hold it for a long time because that lets you push the peak down.
That's correct.
And typically that's days. So if
Yes.
we choose something like this, the trade-off for this is likely looking at during those 2 or 3 times a year where it would fill up to 14 feet, which is apparently the depth, we would likely see that 14 feet of depth for 2 to 3 days, maybe 4 days if it's a wet 4 days.
Yeah, if you had a really big storm and then
then
a series of
cloudy,
storms
cool
after
weather
that, it
after
would
that,
obviously
yes.
stay there longer. But it is could be designed as a mobile area. You could, on the slopes, if you wanted to do a more natural vegetation, you probably could do that. The bottom, because it's always, there's going to be water more consistently at the bottom, it will be wet in nature, soggy, but it will be grassed, and it will be, and I'm sure that there are numerous of these types of basins, maybe not to this scale.
We don't have that many that work, so it's, I don't have a good example in my head of what these look like when they're actually working and they're filled up, then drained out, then filled up, and then does the vegetation live? The ones that I know of are always dry, so they have nice
They're not going
grass.
to live in 14 feet. You can't have a,
The vegetation, you're
You're gonna
only
have
gonna
grass
have
in a
that
14
type of condition a couple times a year.
And Commissioner Schaefer, if you were to go, we've brought up a lot of times the Church of the Savior. Well, in some of those really big storms, I have visited that basin. So you know that if you drive by today, it is just all grass. But I have seen it with several feet now, whether it's 3 or 4 feet, not necessarily 10 or 12 feet. But that basin does hold water at certain times. And I think one of the options that Ryan spoke of, we can also possibly look at doing some type of a BMP on the floor of the basin. So maybe we mow the sides of the basin in grass, have that grass, but maybe the floor of the basin are plants that can sustain what they're going to, where at times they're submerged and at other times they're totally dry. And that can be a whole different bottom, little educational signage to boot, but that's one other way to look at it. But near your ward on Bryn Mawr Avenue, right by 476,
Never seen a drop of water in there.
right, well, you're seeing a basin that doesn't take one. That's one of the ones I mentioned that was from the 70s and 80s. But that's the look of that basin.
Okay.
Well, Longworth, remember we had Doug go out and inspect it? That one does, that fills and drains.
Longworth?
Yeah, right on Roberts Road.
Longchamps?
No, Longworth.
Okay.
And we have the
All right,
development
I have
off
a
of
couple-
Layton.
Kathy lives, Kathy.
I have a couple
I have
more
a
questions
couple,
for you. Oh, go ahead.
Well, actually, on that thread, I just want to, why would we need to mow it, other than aesthetically? Wouldn't it be better for respiration and trying to get this water to, evaporate and absorb at the site? We want to convey that water downstream, but we really want to get some of it to recharge the ground, and we want to respirate it. Are there plant species that are?
As Steve said, there's many different ways that you can kind of outfit the look of these basins. It's very common for them to be grassed. You could have wetland plants at the bottom if you wanted to do that. There's several different ways that you could do that. Just the nature of the soils are going to be more determinative about how much infiltration you're going to get. So that
Right,
if
so you're
that's
digging
available,
out,
that
and you'll
will
hit
occur.
clay, and
Yeah, if it's
they will
all
occur,
clay,
right.
you're not going to get very much of that.
Yeah, so Ryan, you're not really going to design the infiltration. You're going to infiltrate as much as you can, whatever the soil
correct.
gives you.
Yes.
And then if the infiltration lets us plant something pleasing, we plant something pleasing. If it
Yes.
won't tolerate that, we plant grass and mow it when it's not muddy.
That's correct.
Okay, but why do we need to mow it?
Because people won't like looking at it?
Well, it's
correct?
14 feet below a berm.
Oh, okay.
On one side, so I'm thinking, why would we
Yeah.
do that? I don't live there, so I don't want to say.
The other
we
reason
wouldn't.
we mow it, at least occasionally, is because what I've seen over time with basins that are just left alone, you start to get volunteer growth of trees, and not that trees are a bad thing, but at one point, you can see a basin that has actually lost capacity because of everything that has grown in there.
Okay, so the question I have, so I'm inclined to support option E. I just want to make sure that option E gives us the opportunity to expand in the future if we see the need. So the grading that you'll be doing in this project, is there any concrete that would, if I look to the left side of
No,
this
picture? If I may, the elevation which you can go down to is governed by the storm sewer that we would be connecting into, and we're basically trying to maximize that. So if in the future you wanted to say, okay, the park is now going to be entirely a basin, you would basically be doing no work here. It would just all be excavation up in that area.
And that's the point I want to make, is that, if we're only getting 10% improvement with this project, and we determine later that we have to be more aggressive. What I don't want to do is spend a lot of money on this design, on this build, and then find out we have to spend even more money to make it bigger, to overcome something we did in the first build. So, as long as we're not putting concrete structures in on that left side.
No, if
it's all
that were the
grading,
case in the future, as I said, you would excavate out this area. Because of the extra volume, you might do a retrofit on the outlet structure. It's not, I could see the scenario where you wouldn't have to replace it. You just might change a few things around with it. But then this lower embankment would all be the same. That would be untouched.
Okay, so I think that's good. I just want to be realistic that, I know this is still only 8% of the I'll call it the watershed in that area that this will serve, but it seems to be 8%, 10%. To me, if we can capture as much water at this location as we can in the future, it will play an important part of the solution.
I think it's important to, you're a community that's built out. You're going to be looking for opportunities to do what you can, where you can, and still maintain the integrity of your community, what makes it your community. And I think this project provides that option.
Okay. I have a couple questions. Can you give us an idea of, for E, the timeline of what, so all of this is kind of everything thrown in here from design to construction.
Yeah, I think you would probably be looking at, we'd be going into final design, doing plans, et cetera. As you mentioned, this is not an easy project to design, and there's a lot of details to run out, permits, et cetera. I was talking earlier with the township manager. We're probably looking at late summer, probably more realistically into fall this time next year, going into construction. One, it gives you the benefit of having the use of the fields during all of 2014. This is an excavation project, would be an excellent wintertime project to do. And it would kind of separate out, not having the construction. You'd minimize when the construction is there, as well as people are trying to use the field. So I think you're probably in that 9 to 12 month range before the start of construction.
Okay. Something I heard earlier, or read earlier, about that there would be some waivers required for the water quality obligations?
That's correct. If this was a project that was happening with a new development, there's several things that would be required on the water quality front. Where the project is located, because it's in the middle of this flow, typically you would have to account for treat all 41 acres that's coming at you for water quality. We just don't have the space there to do that. If that were a requirement, you couldn't do anything here.
So is that typically, lack of space, is that typically a good excuse for not, and you're granted the waivers?
But you're not doing a new development here. This is a retrofit, protecting health and safety of the neighborhood. So we would be looking to get waivers where we can, put in water quality improvements where we can. One of the things that's not really shown here, but we could do a water quality feature maybe up in this area that could treat some of the drainage from the site. So we could treat 3 or 4 acres. We can't treat 40 acres. So do what we can, where we can, and try to make that work.
Okay, and so assume that we decide on an option tonight. Do you understand, or have you heard the message that we want complete use of this park, or do we need to make that part of, continue to say, we want the baseball field, we want the tot lots, we don't want interruption of that use?
I understand
So,
that.
okay.
And I'm not going to do anything without direction from the township. So.
Right. Well, you don't know how many times you have to put it in there to make sure it happens. And then my last question, So the design and permitting, which is, just looking at the figures, not a huge part of the project, cost-wise. That's next year. Then 2015 is when construction starts.
Well, you'd be starting construction towards
Fall
the end
2014.
of 14, so
And
yes.
then, okay. So for this probable construction cost for 18, that would come upon us in
You would have to obligate that in 2014.
2014, the fall of
You
2014.
may not pay it all out in 2014, but
And by that time, we have one round of fee revenue come in, and we're getting close to our second round. Okay, thank you. Those
I
are my
have
questions.
2 more questions, I think.
sure.
So, have you studied the sort of the flooding history of what's occurred in this?
Yes.
Okay, how many of the floods would this prevent that have occurred?
Totally prevent, I would say none.
Okay, how many of them would they mitigate?
I don't know if I have that number because what you're really, as we talked about earlier, most of your benefit is occurring in those middle storms.
Okay,
And I think Mr. Bruno might give you a firsthand of how often water rushes down that street. Those are the types that we'd be
Okay.
addressing.
but I'm a little confused now. Are you telling me I'm going to spend $600,000 and not solve the problem because you just told me it
If
won't?
the problem that you're trying to solve is flooding at Poplar Avenue, you're not going to solve it with this project.
So why am I spending the money?
Because in my opinion, there are a couple reasons. First off, you have a system right now that doesn't work. And from my understanding, prices that the Public Works Department has gotten, you're looking at almost $100,000 to make it work in a very limited nature. Also, you'd have to obligate ongoing maintenance funds to keep it up and working. This type of project, you would take that maintenance drastically down. It's an open system, equipment that you already have can do the maintenance. You're drastically reducing that. So I think that's, first and foremost, that's a big factor. Number 2 is you're doing, as I explained, it's an area that you can do more stormwater management than what you're currently doing. It will have a benefit on downstream properties, but it's an incremental benefit. It's not a solution to, if your measuring stick is Poplar Avenue, it's not a solution. But it is an incremental project in areas that you reasonably can construct something.
With your answer to me, the way I processed it, and I'm sure it's not the way what the intent was, is I have something that's not working. I could spend $100,000 a year to try to fix it and it won't work. Or I could spend $600,000 and something that's not going to work either, but I don't have to spend my $100,000 to invest on something that isn't working.
Right now you can store about 1 acre foot. This will store approximately 3.4. So you're increasing how much you can store. One, you're getting a system that will work and will work more cheaply going into the future than what you currently have. And number 2, you're getting a system that's 3 times as large than the system you have. So is there a benefit to the system? Yes. But if your measuring stick is flooding at Poplar Avenue, then I have to answer that this is not a solution to that.
That's why you're here. So I appreciate the honesty of the. So I store more water, but I don't prevent the flooding.
You
I
help
think we
minimize
have
the
to-
flooding, and on certain storms, you reduce it.
But aren't you piping the overflow so it doesn't run down the street and run over the properties? You're taking it directly to the creek?
We're taking,
Yeah.
yes, some
So
of that.
that's a benefit.
That is a benefit.
Not
and
to the
that's-
people
that's
on
all-
Poplar.
That's
No.
more, that's additional storage in the pipe itself. You also are, generating more contact area. There's also a possibility for more infiltration.
Madam
All-
President?
None of those are
Yes.
Just to
quantified.
answer, maybe to add to Ryan, Kevin makes a very good point. I mean, that's the reality of what this is. Is it going to solve all the problems? It's not going to solve that problem, because I think the bigger issue, and Ryan and I spoke about this, you have 600 acres coming from, I believe, the north. that really, that's where your issues that are ending up down at Poplar, Willow, all in those areas. So that's something I know Commissioner Nagel's spoken about that, and Commissioner Higgins too, about, Tredyffrin, having to look at that and where that comes to. But I think a big part of this in the storms that I've seen, and I've been here a little over 3.5 years, North Wayne Avenue gets impacted significantly from these storms. That's a major thoroughfare that goes through the township, and because that system's blown out, we have a lot of issues that basically shuts that area of the township down. So I think when you look at public access, emergency access, this basin's going to help assist us to help control a lot of this water that is there, which allows for that emergency access up and down North Wayne Avenue, which is a big
I
impact.
also, I want to make the point that this particular project isn't going to solve anybody's problems. It's going to help a little bit, but this is one little step, and maybe in 2 or 3 years, we make some progress with the AT&T lot. And then that makes it even a little bit better. And then maybe a year or two after that, we get some progress with the next property up the line. And that's how we're going to solve these problems. We're never going to be able to have one solution one time and solve it all. We got to take what chances we can and incrementally make it better and better and better, and grab the opportunities that we can start making change. So it's a
Right.
start.
If Kevin, I think you feel that you're left now with a vacuum with a problem and no solution. But if you define the problem solution as a 100-year storm, no, you're not going to solve it. A 50-year storm, no. A 20, you're starting to get there. A 10, yes. A 5, and a 1 and a 2. Right now, you're at 0, nothing.
Yeah.
So that's okay. That's issue 1. I'm glad you mentioned AT&T because I think the board should know something, and that is that if a good amount of this infiltration is coming from AT&T, some of it's coming further on West Avenue to the AT&T property and then I think we ought to be thinking about the dollars here. And Bob, this is where you come in. We have a neighbor in AT&T. They're a good neighbor. I think you've had some discussions with them. They're open to hearing a proposal from us to soften or minimize the effects of their property causing harm to our ball field and downstream from there. And so what I am trying to articulate here is that the problem we're solving here is really not our problem.
Well,
It's AT&T and West Avenue. West Avenue is our problem, but AT&T has
Yeah,
got an ownership of a portion of this problem, and therefore, when we talk about dollars for $606,000,
If
we ought
I
to be
may.
talking to AT&T about kicking in for that, some of that.
Well, I can't speak to that. I would just say that I believe the AT&T site is around 5 acres in size, and only about 3 of that is in this particular watershed. The other drains the other way. So of the 40 acres, they have, in rough numbers, 3 to 4 acres. So I don't know if you could classify.
Almost 10% of the cost could be, we could go to AT&T and ask them if they want to be part of this. I'll
But does
emphasize-
AT&T pay property taxes and pay into the stormwater fee?
Madam President, if I may, Kevin makes a good point, and I think it's part of this. Speaking with AT&T, PECO, they've been very good and very receptive to this, but however, they want to see something of what we're looking for. They want to see a preliminary plan. Ryan and I spoke about that this afternoon, which I've authorized them to go ahead and put a very rough sketch together of what we can go to. The point is now, with the stormwater utility fee, that's all impervious. So if they can make corrections to this, there's going to be a definite benefit. So I think there's a definite trade-off for us to go to that. But both PECO and AT&T have said, look, bring us something what you're looking for. Because for us to sit
SEPTA, not PECO.
No, actually, PECO has a substation that's down there as well. We've spoken to them in regards to that too.
So
but-
at this point, we'll have a shovel-ready plan. We should be asking them, in my opinion, based on the numbers I just heard, AT&T should be asked to underwrite as much as 9 or 10% of the cost of this project because they are contributing about 9 to 10% of the water flow because of their 3 to 4 acres out of 40 acres.
No,
So-
what we want them to do is spend money on their
their
property
lot.
to lessen the
Yes,
water going
that's
in
what
here.
I would rather have them
Well,
spend that
either
money
or.
on.
I like
their
John's
lot.
idea too. They can do both. I like that.
Let me
Well,
ask you a question,
If they
Ryan.
redevelop their
If
property, they
you-
will have to do
In a
that.
perfect world,
Yeah.
if we had control of that AT&T lot,
Yeah.
the 3 or 4 acres that are draining, if they said, okay, we're gonna make that one big giant rain garden, forget our parking needs.
Yeah.
We're gonna just make this all infiltration. Would that, because that's not just their land they're infiltrating, they're taking water from upstream. Would that help? I mean, is that,
It would help, obviously, anywhere, as you said before, any incremental thing you could do would be a benefit. The backside of the AT&T property is really a drainage swale, so the water's already kind of concentrated there, and it's going from point A to point B. It's coming from the residential properties, flowing along the back and down. If that structure was not there and you did some sort of rain garden, obviously that would be a benefit. But
or more drainage containment?
Sure. It would be some measure of benefit. I don't know if they would, even with the credit that they might get from the stormwater utility, I don't see that being financially enough to offset tearing down that structure if they said that they did not need it. So again, it's trying to control expectations a little bit.
The hope in the future is they redevelop that property. It may be 20 years from now, but when they redevelop, they'll have to incorporate
They will have to meet the
B&Ts.
stormwater management
Right.
requirements and,
So,
yes.
and that's why I'm saying now. They're not going to do that now. So if they can kick in, I'd be thrilled if they decide to put in, a $250,000 system on their lot, but that's not realistic to me right now. What's realistic is that they help pay for this. I'll just remind everyone that Villanova University did this very thing. We didn't have a place to put a basin, but Villanova had Pike Field, and they installed a system at their cost of $275,000. And we went from having daily, literally every time it rained, we had flooding in people's backyards to the point where I have no complaints now. Virtually no complaints about.
It's an underground system under Pike
It's
Field?
an underground system under Pike Field. They put very large corrugated tubes in. And ever since that day, that was about, I think that's around 6 years ago, we went from having, 5 years ago, we went from having constant flooding issues, like where people's yards were turning into rapids, literally that bad,
Yeah.
to virtually nothing at this point. Now, I'm not going to say it never floods, but the point is it's so much better. So there's a partnership there. No taxpayer money was used for that, and we got major benefit for a whole neighborhood.
All right, so let's move this along. Is there any other commissioner comment about the options that we have in front of us and questions? Would somebody like to make a motion? We're missing a commissioner.
Madam
again.
President, maybe while you're waiting for the commissioner, I know I'm in the minority here. I would recommend option A, because again, I look at taking all full advantage of the stormwater, but I will say that Ryan, Steve Norcini, and Tammy have taken the strong position of the residents in the neighborhood and the parks to maintain the ball field, the playground, and that. So those 3 individuals have gone very strong in that direction, so.
All
that's
right.
okay. It
Well, thank you
contradicts-
for your input.
You're welcome.
I'll move option E.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. I think perhaps we can move from item F to item G. Bill, what you just moved was passage of Resolution 2013-133 with the fill-in-the-blanks dollar amount of $606,000.
Well, we're right now, we're just
099.
accepting a plan.
Well, no, because we were just discussing and selecting. The
Yeah.
actual motion is what, to choose E
Okay.
is what you just did.
Okay.
So it's Resolution 2013-133 with,
Prepare final design plans and bidding documents for reconstruct stormwater basin at North Wayne Field based on option E.
okay. It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any other commissioner comment about this?
Well, we have to put in some dollars here.
We have, it's option E, it's all right there.
Are you gonna
When
do
you
it
say
that way?
option E, it's
Okay,
all
all
right there on the
fine.
page.
Well,
It's an estimate.
all right, the resolution actually has grayed out areas because I didn't know if the board would pick an option and if they did what it was. So based on your actions here tonight, I'll edit the resolution so that it reflects the appropriate design costs.
For E.
For E.
Thank you.
And this not to exceed price that is in, that is engineering services, that would just be the design
That's
costs.
correct, because, and as good as Ryan's estimated cost may
Right.
be, the sealed bidding will
So
be the
this,
tip.
this actual, what we're passing is the design services for option E.
Correct, it's about,
Okay.
if you took, and in the memo I outlined, that ranges from, depending on which system you pick, and if you go to to option E,
It's not construction.
that'll be that will be the total of preliminary design permitting, geotech, additional surveying, and final engineering specifications and construction support allowance. So that's, actually, that would go on the, so it's that total, which is around 85,000.
So that it is around 85,000? So let's just put that in there, not to exceed 85,000. Or if it's, so that we are clear about what we're voting on.
Okay, so, yeah.
Not to exceed $85,000, and then,
In two places.
yeah. But in the motion, we're making it clear that we prefer option E. All
Yes,
right.
that's the way I sense it.
Any
For what-
other
For what it's worth, I'm
commissioner?
going to vote against it, but because I think it should be part of the ordinance. But of the options, I think E is the best option.
Okay.
And I think you're going to see some benefit, and if it's worth the sacrifices, but I do think we have to control expectations that that benefit is going to be in the, 1% for these peak storms and, upwards of 8 to 10% for these small storms. So.
Okay, any other commissioner comment or staff comment? Any public comment about this? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Jane Galley. I live on Barclayton Road, 143. I just had some questions about the basin. I guess you'll have to answer them. Is when you have a basin that has water in it for many days or remains moist and stuff like that, what about bugs and mosquitoes and things like that? Well, I have other couple things, but that's the first
21
things.
days, isn't it?
Can you answer that, or?
I mean,
We should have an,
else here
we should
answer
have
the
an
question?
we should have an entomologist here, but I think mosquitoes take 21 days to,
But I'm saying, am I mistaken that will remain moist and wet for long periods of time?
As the Commissioner said, for the eggs to hatch, it does take upwards of 21 days. You're looking at just a couple days for the water to come and go. The ground, if it's consistently, if you're in a rainy period, it'll be wet to walk on. It will be graded so that it has positive drainage, will not hold water. So there should not be standing water at the bottom. But the ground could be moist to walk on, or if you were trying to mow it.
Okay. And one more little quick question. I'm worrying about children, especially with the tot lot right there, if we're trying to maintain the tot lot in that area. Does this create like an attractive nuisance where children, I mean, how high is this fence gonna be, or how to keep kids out of here so that someone doesn't get trapped, or an animal get trapped, or, your beloved pet or whatever? If let's say we have a big downpour like quickly, I don't know how fast that fills up. That's the other, where you might catch some children, if they're trying to hop the fence or think it's fun to be in there in 8 feet of water, and then we have a kid drown. I mean,
Well, it'll probably be a 6-foot fence, it won't be 4 feet that you can climb over. It'll be difficult to climb over this fence.
I just think these are things
Yeah.
You mean like, you're not talking about little kids, you're talking about teenagers that
I'm
might,
talking about kids, yeah, kids that think this would be a great idea to jump into an 8-foot pile of water. I mean, and then either A, can't get out, or B, don't swim very well because they've been bullied into it or, goaded into it. I think that's what worries me about when you say 8 to 10 feet of water, because that's like, even if it's for a couple days, that's enough for kids to think it's a great deal of fun.
But we have, this a practical question and a liability question. We have a liability possibility. We have a possible liability problem, so we'll erect the fence. But we can't save the world from their own, people's, their own stupidity. I mean, if, that's, we just can't do it. It's like somebody climbing over a swimming pool fence and drowning.
Okay, I think
We
we just
can-
need to
Those are
make sure
good-
the
those are
fence
good,
is 8 feet or whatever it takes to make
Well, we
it
don't, we
really
can,
hard to do.
legislatively, though, it would be a no trespassing area, and there could be fines associated with that, and, you know, that would be something we would be concerned about. I mean, we don't want kids to play in there.
Right.
And
We
kids
could
will not have
sign
the
it.
sense not to, so,
Yeah, they don't.
you know, their parents will be unhappy that their kid was in there and got a fine, but, you know,
Right, and hopefully not dead. The other, last real quick question is, okay, from what was said tonight, this only takes care of a very small chunk of the problem, but is this also part of a whole, this goes back to, I think, John, you were saying about, or having a whole plan about how to maintain this? Because I even see, I mean, the township, or the school district was gonna fix Lake Radnor, you know, by putting in all that stuff, but I still see that Wayne Avenue, or whatever, yeah, gets flooded and gets puddled with water and can't come through. So, you know, I'm worried that the amount of money doesn't really address the whole issue, or maybe one issue that was slightly more expensive may take care of a better choice or better time.
As Commissioner Schaefer said, there's no one solution for all the storm water flooding in the township of Radnor. And as Mr. Cummings said, you're built out as a community, thus you build what you can where you can. And that's all we can hope to do. Sure, we can't, we've got to get Tredyffrin Township to participate in a regional compact of some sort.
Right.
And we've got to tackle the West Avenue or SEPTA flooding problem, I guess I should say. So, yeah, it's, I think this is a start, and it's one small part of the problem that we're trying to solve.
No, I agree. I just was saying, is one of the other options covering a little bit more or doing a better job for a longer period of time? That would be just my comment.
Item J is to deal with the South Wayne and Middle School issue, to finally connect the rest of the street to the system.
Great.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to thank you for getting your hands around this. I'm Bill Burno, 205 North Wayne Avenue. It's been a long time in coming. This basin that is there now has not worked since Floyd. To give you an idea how this system works, it's there now. It's a basin with pipes underneath. It's a manifold system where you have, like, I'm assuming probably more than 10 pipes into a header pipe. When Floyd came, it burst and took out the whole, I guess it'd be the east side of the berm, and flooded out the tot lot, took everything out, all the grass and the mulch and stuff that was down there. And it has not worked since that time. It works. It did work, and we would get like 2 or maybe 3 inches of water per hour. It held it, and it did a pretty good job of holding it. After it burst, it was not even holding that, and it made the situation a lot worse. I had to rebuild my garage. It came off of the pad. There was so much pressure coming down my driveway from the basin. Also, this cuts off a major road. It was stated earlier, North Wayne Avenue, in regards to traffic, stones that are out there making it unsafe. Cars can skid into each other and causing a major accident, or possibly even somebody getting killed there. But I have a couple of questions about this basin, the E option, and I am definitely in favor of this E option. I like it. I think it's pretty good for what we need at this point, and keeping the field. And I myself love this field. Seneca Egbert Field was dedicated, I believe, in 1941, and it's or named in 1941 from what the plaque says on the building at the school district. It is a remarkable field. A lot of neat ball games go on over there. I don't know if you're really aware of it. I go over there quite a bit and watch the kids play. They're pretty good ball players. And also, Mr. Caniglia, who is here a lot, also has his soccer team there. So there's a lot of neat things that do occur at this field. I have a couple of questions about the basin, and I guess I'll have to direct them to Ryan since he's engineering. And Ryan has just been excellent with communication. Steve Norcini, he's my raining day buddy. He's out there when it's the pouring rains. We're out there together looking at this thing. I asked him, hey, where's your hat? But anyway, he's just a great guy to work with. Ryan, on the entrance of the basin, where it's coming in now, if it gets clogged, it overflows and just bypasses the basin altogether. This design, is this going to capture that? Or will it overflow and just bypass the basin altogether and come out onto the driveway like it's doing when it gets clogged now?
In the larger storms, in the smaller storms, the outflow will go out the new pipe. In the larger storms, it will still, to a lesser extent, but there will be overflow down the driveway.
Okay, well, my question is this. Where it comes in the culvert now, if that culvert gets clogged, it just comes up, fills up, and it goes out to the right, completely bypassing the basin.
Yes, that issue would be resolved. There
Okay.
would be a clear path for the culvert to come in.
Okay, and the size of the final pipe, what would be the size of the final pipe on the poplar? I believe it's 36 inches now.
That would stay in place, and there would be an additional 30 installed.
Okay, so there would be 2 pipes going to the creek?
They may be combined into one junction chamber and only one pipe at the end, but there will be 2 conduit pathways.
Okay. How about bursting of the basin? Is that a possibility? Like the other one did on the side? Or
Well, I think the other one, the underground pipes had poor seams, from what I understand, and so that provided a water source to one particular area of the embankment and caused it to fail. This embankment will be designed to withstand an open holding of water, so it should be a lesser extent to that concern.
Thank you very much.
Ryan, what would be the overtop, what would be the storm that it would overtop? Bill mentioned the concern about overtopping.
Mike.
At the 5-year storm, I'm sorry, at the 5-year storm, about 6% of the inflow water would overflow. So it comes in at 70 CFS. 4 CFS has the potential of overflowing down the street, but not until the 5-year storm.
Can you answer that in English?
Not really. No. If you have a 5-year storm, let's say you have a 1, 2, 3, 4-year storm, the water would come into the basin, be held by the basin, and only go out through the outlet pipe. Once you get to the 5-year storm, you've maximized the storage that you have in the basin. You've maximized how the water leaving via the pipe. So at that point, it starts to crest over the embankment and come down the drive as it does now. Currently, that happens almost immediately.
So once every 5 years, it'll flood.
I did not say that. It's a 5-year storm. It's kind of a misnomer. I'm sure you've heard that argument before. It's
Theoretically, once every...
Theoretically, yes.
How often does it flood now?
Oh, gosh.
I'm just trying to,
If we get 2 inches of water in an hour, we're in trouble.
so basically it floods a few times a year.
Kevin, I would say it floods about 4 times a year.
Okay, so you go from 20 floods to theoretically 1 flood.
I mean, it'll be a tremendous help.
I'm just trying to understand.
You know, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen it. I mean, it's like a muddy river coming down there. It's
We
terrible.
got it.
I think we're ready to move to vote.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for coming out. Is there any other public comment? All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. And this is for Bill Spingler's motion that selected option E and authorized resolution 2013-133 with a not-to-exceed figure of $85,000. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes 6-1 with Commissioner Curley opposing. Okay, next.
The next item is a motion to the next item is a motion to authorize the Public Works Department to receive bids for the reconstruction of the stormwater management basin at the North Wayne Field, which is the item we just discussed.
That's correct.
So normally, would we do this, authorize the bids when we haven't seen the final design?
Just receiving bids.
The thought on this was to be able to.
Just get it done and have it in the
Right,
pocket?
and not have to worry about falling back on a specific meeting with the board to go to bid.
Okay.
If you wish, as Ryan gets very close to this, I can have him come back in here and present to the board the final version.
So that's going to be like a year from now.
That's yeah.
I sort of think we should wait. I mean,
All we're
You
doing
know,
is
who knows
authorizing-
what's...
Is there an obligation, if you put it to bid, to accept the bids? So
No.
I would authorize Steve to go to bid on this once it's done.
It would actually be, if
Because we really
Ryan's
need to
thinking
know that.
construction in the fall, this would be next summer that we would be going to bid for this project.
Right, and if we
So
only have one
why do you
meeting
need
a
it now
month.
then, Steve?
This
All
was
right.
just to fast-track things as we move along, and as the basin design comes to its end, not to have to worry about that our next meeting is
But
3
couldn't you-
weeks away.
Theoretically, if you expect the design to be done in June, couldn't you put this on an April meeting?
We could do that.
Because I think it's disingenuous to have people make proposals and bids and put them through just so we can price check.
But Kevin, you won't be here.
I still think you need to be fair to people.
You're just sticking us with it.
It's not a fairness issue to the contractors. They're all going to bid the same.
Yeah, but if we have no intention of awarding it, then...
Well, I mean, I just feel like we're, between now and then, there are probably going to be changes to the design.
Wait, it has to go to bid so we find out the cost. So we're not committing to spending the money. We're just committing to finding out what the cost will be.
Ryan, did you have something you wanted to say?
I think that we're going to go through a permitting process. We're going to work out details with the park and the fencing and the like. It might be a good idea for the commissioners to see that before it's bid, just to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Right, I agree with that.
All right.
All right, so...
Next item.
Next item.
Well,
No.
we'll just move to withdraw item H from the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Wait,
Aye.
who seconded it? Raise your hand, second it, John. All right, John got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
7-0.
The next item is a motion to authorize a request for proposals for the consulting engineers to assist the Director of Public Works and the Stormwater Advisory Committee in the planning, implementation, and commencement of the Stormwater Management Program and Credit Program. And Steve, you have a short memo on this subject, so do you want to elaborate?
This is just to get the board's blessing to go to RFP for the services you described.
Well, you have my blessing, but I also want to give you my input, which I have given
Yes,
to you
ma'am.
before, but I will give it again. I'm hoping that we hear from firms on this front that specialize and have a great reputation on non-structural and avoidance and preventative measures. And I would like to see us find a firm and work with a firm who takes a very aggressive approach to working with private landowners and coming up with partnerships to get some of this work done on land that we don't own. Because some of the most important draining problems are coming from land that we don't own. So those are the attributes that I would like to see in this partner.
They will be bullet points within the RFP.
Thank you.
Jimmy, you want to make a motion?
Then I do move the
Authorization.
passage of item I on the agenda.
Second?
Any other commissioner comment? Any staff comment or public
Oh,
comment?
wait, I just, I wanted to make a comment on this. Obviously, this committee's going to be looking at, as the credit program will include BMPs that residents elect to do for their properties. But I also want to make sure, one of the caveats to this whole program was that we have better enforcement of current violations. And I can't tell you how many times I walk by a house where the downspout is piped to the street.
This is 50 times you've told
Yeah,
us
it's
this.
50 times and you're not right on it, so.
I'm not right?
Yes, you are not correct.
Why am I not correct?
Because it's just not the law. So,
All right, we don't need to
Actually,
debate it tonight. It's
I
10
read the
o'clock.
zone, I'm sorry, Don.
You can-
Okay.
Go
Don,
ahead.
Don, excuse me, but I recall reading that it is unlawful to discharge water from a downspout onto a street.
No, I don't
Maybe
believe
missed
that's
it.
Commissioner Fisher, why don't you finish your thought?
Well, my thought is that have, not only do we have education as part of this and encourage BMPs, but we have better enforcement and better enforcement of existing ordinances. For instance, I do see downspouts plumbed directly into sewer lines. That is not legal. We know that is not legal. So, those properties need to be disconnected, right? So,
I don't know anything.
well, I've seen them. So, and I've brought those issues to the attention of the staff. So, but we want to make sure that we get enforcement, we get education, and we get BMPs.
Thank you. Is there any other commissioner comment? Any other staff comment or public comment? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Now, the final item under Public Works could be a long one, I'm not sure. It's now 5 after 10, and in a certain other time zone, it is 5 after 4 in the morning. The subject is the authorization for Chagrin Valley Engineers Limited to prepare the final design plans and bidding documents for the final connection of the South Wayne Avenue and Middle School underground stormwater storage system. So I will move that authorization.
Second?
Do we have a ballpark of what that would cost?
Now, and actually, there's a couple of facets to this. So we have the unfinished storm sewer pipe that came down School Lane. We also have, but that's not the only cause of that flooding, because we have flooding down at Runnymede. So really, that whole stretch from School to Runnymede, depending on the storm, can be flooded out. And secondly, we have the middle school subsurface system has a finite capacity, right? It's not an infinite unit that can just take massive amounts of stormwater. So really, this should be boiled down as to allow CVE to study that and come up with an appropriate plan of action.
can you
For
just
this.
tell us how much it would cost then?
I do not have the price proposal at this point.
Educated guess? 50, 100, a million, 10 million?
Less than 10 million.
Give me an educated ballpark number.
So was it your intention for us to proceed without that number? I would think we need that number. I might misunderstanding something.
You're looking for what the cost of the project would
Yeah.
be?
No, the costs of
Cost of
the
the-
engineering. It seems like you're asking just for the engineering, the authorization to
That's
proceed with
correct.
the
I'm
engineering.
guessing Ryan's probably going to do it for free for us.
No.
So that works.
That-
But we could do a Ryan, if there's a not to exceed number, I think
Give
the
us a
board
not
would
to
look at
exceed
a not
number,
to
and then if
exceed.
you need more, come back and explain why.
Because I think as far as what Ryan's looking to do, and we spoke about this briefly this afternoon, is understanding that system that sits under that middle school field may not actually achieve what everyone has thought that they were getting, because that may have a storage capacity of only 3 to 5 years, which virtually, that's not storing a whole lot of water. So, and the issues that we have, even by making the connection, this goes back to Elaine, your point of trying, when the original plan is trying to catch a lot more water coming here, is maybe what we look to do is not go into this, but ask Ryan to actually give us a brief scenario of what we're looking at here.
Wait,
to
so
this
you're
whole-
saying it's possible that if we did hook up the schooling Runnymede connection, that system couldn't handle it anyway?
It's only the capacity is 3 to 5 years, so yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh.
And we also have the issue down at Runnymede where we have inlets that connect directly to the culvert, which runs through Midland. So speaking with Ryan, I would ask the board for a not to exceed amount of $50,000 to have him study the situation, and that's going to be to evaluate the existing subsurface system, the extension of the stormwater management, the storm sewer pipe that was not installed, as well as the issue that is south of there, to come up with some idea of what we can do. Because I
Okay.
said that there is a finite capacity to that system under the middle school.
Well, we
So
we
did I
need this
understand-
knowledge because we don't want to spend money hooking it up and then
Correct.
find that there's nowhere for the water to go
Right.
anyway.
We have a rule, if we're going to go do a project, we have to fix it. So I wouldn't want to just say to the board, let me extend that storm sewer pipe and connect in West Avenue and bring everything down, because I don't know that that's going to be the whole solution. And I've laid out to you, Ryan, what those problems are there. So this would be to study that area, say, Windermere to school, and see what we can do, because maybe we can't put all that water back in that system.
And you've done a little preliminary study of that area to begin with when you did our first report 2 years ago.
Yeah, we reviewed the initial design report and kind of logged the issue at hand. We did not delve into it in any great detail, and certainly not the immediate drainage area that feeds just downstream of it.
Okay.
But Steve, did you just, if I understood you correctly, you changed this request? You're now requesting authorization for him to do
Yes, sir.
studying?
This is
and not-
just for study at this point.
Madam President, if I can,
Yeah.
what I'd ask is that this one be withdrawn. We'll recreate this, the information, bring it back to the board so you have the details I think you're
For
looking for.
December 2nd?
Correct. So
That's
it'll be
fine.
1 week from today.
That's fine. We can
Thank
wait
you.
a week. Okay. Does somebody want to move to withdraw that?
I will move to withdraw item J from the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0. All right. We don't have listed anything, the headings for Board of Health or Parks and Rec, but John Nagel, do you have anything for those?
I missed the Board of Health meeting because my calendar had the wrong date. Parks and Rec has a really neat event coming up, a visit from Santa, where you can make arrangements and Santa Claus and elves will deliver presents to your house. See the Township website. There's a link there on the front page to Parks and Rec. And sounds like a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I don't think I can get them to go to Marple where my grandchildren are, but it looks like it's going to be a great event. And thanks to the creativity of staff. That's all I have.
The library, I have just 2 announcements for the library. They are engaged, they have engaged an architect who is doing a feasibility study for the reconfiguration of the building and for upgrading the HVAC system. They are taking public input. If you are interested in, or if you have ideas or things that you think they should focus on, they have a website set up, not a website, an email address set up to get suggestions and comments from the public. And it is buildingsuggestions@radnorlibrary.org. And building suggestions is one word with no spaces. You can also get on their Facebook page or their website and get a link to that. Also, they are hosting a special holiday music concert at Garrett Hale, in Garrett Hale on Thursday, December 12th at 10:30 at the Radnor United Methodist Church on Conestoga. And the performers are 2 of a kind, and the concert is free. So that's it for library. And that brings us to old business.
I have a very quick item. Bob, could we have placed on our next meeting agenda the subject of Canada geese in our parks? The Environmental Advisory Council is most interested in appearing before us to give us their report, which they started last summer and have finished. Thank you.
Any other old business?
Yeah, I'll just, this is old business as of 10 minutes ago. Commissioner Curley told me that I was wrong about an ordinance, and I'll just read the ordinance and he can tell me if I'm still wrong. 24542, this is under prohibitions on stormwater. 24542, roof drains. Roof drains shall not be connected to streets, sanitary or storm sewers, or roadside ditches in order to promote overland flow and infiltration, percolation of stormwater where advantageous to do so. And B reads, where it is more advantageous to connect directly to streets or storm sewers, connections of roof drains to streets or roadside ditches may be permitted on a case-by-case basis as determined by the municipality. So Don, I'm reading this as roof drains shall not be
Yes,
connected.
that's for new
Thanks.
construction. The
Well,
You
area
know what,
is
we,
surrounded with
gentlemen,
these
we
kinds of
really don't need to
connections.
debate this
understand.
tonight. So
Don,
I'm going to go ahead and
the
say
point
thank you
is,
for the
it's not legal.
clarification, and let's move on to new business. And I believe our manager, Mr. Zienkowski, has a notion he'd like to put forward for us to consider.
Sure, I'd like the board to consider authorizing me to allow staff to leave early on this coming Wednesday as a thanks for their hard work and efforts that they've given over the year. They've worked with a shorter staff, and I think it's a good way to be able to thank them for their efforts to be able to leave early on Wednesday. They would at least be putting in a half day.
Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move
to
the
that effect?
approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
John Nagel seconded. Is there any commissioner comment? I just hope that we don't have a huge nor'easter, so they're all called in anyway. But I think it's a very nice gesture, and I'm happy to be a part of it. Is there any staff comment or public comment on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Any other new business?
Yeah, as you noticed out in the lobby, we've had this display up for a few weeks of the honoring the veterans that died in wars. It's Vietnam out there now. That was done by the students at St. Cat's, and last year we brought those kids in and honored them for that, and I'd like to do the same thing this year, Bob, if we could. Have the kids that actually did those posters come in. Thanks.
Any other new business? Any public comment?
Public comment, let's go.
I wanted to ask the board, Jim Schneller, St. David's, ask the board or the solicitor if there's been any resolution or did the solicitor get a chance to look into the fact that there is a right-of-way for a linear park between the environmental park and Harford Park, Kreuzberg Center, so they'd be interconnected. That was established at the time of the tripartite agreement that ended up with Memorial Park and the jogging park around the school. This was going to be the final step, and all of a sudden, there appears to be infringement on the right-of-way.
Jim, let me answer your question. What happened back then in the letter that you had was an attempt by the township at the time, the prior solicitor at the time, to get everyone that backed up to Harris Lane to sign off on a walking trail. That never happened. Caused a lawsuit. So there is no established walking trail right-of-way connecting those two properties. It never followed through. One or two homeowners signed off on it, the rest of them did not.
Is the landowner, could I ask, is the landowner who refused, the one who has passed away or otherwise left the area?
It's not just one that refused. There were multiple landowners that refused to sign off on it. So it's over.
Well, there's only three
Yeah.
parcels.
Well, we don't have it. We don't legally have it, so we can't do it, Jim.
That's
Thanks.
the answer.
Could I ask
that's
one
the
more
answer.
question? Do you know the name of the suit?
What are you going to do, intervene in it?
I knew you'd have a smart comment.
It's called intelligent comment.
Do you know that
The suit, Jim, the suit is over. It was settled over a year ago.
citizens allowed to read what happened? I can't believe that the right-of-way for the township was completely given up.
It wasn't given up.
We never had it.
Well, how did the former board write letters telling people there was a right-of-way?
That didn't happen either.
That's why I want to read the suit. Don't you know the
Yeah.
caption or anything?
We'll get it to you.
I believe, Jim, you know what, it's here in the township building. I don't remember who the plaintiff's name was.
Wasn't the Rollins?
Rollins, yeah.
Was that Rollins?
It was Rollins or Matrinko. One or the other was the plaintiff in that suit.
Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your patience. Please don't close your minds about it because, within reasonable implementation. It might happen, and it would mean a lot to the township.
Thanks, Jim. Is there any other public comment?
Move we adjourn?
All in favor?
Second.
All right.
Adjourned.